I never used to be the kind of person who believed in ghosts or monsters or anything that lurked beyond the reach of a flashlight beam. I was 28 then, not some wide-eyed kid, and had spent most of my adult life wrangling heavy machinery and even heavier egos on construction sites. My hands knew the feel of cold steel and vibrating concrete, not spectral chill. I was practical, grounded, or at least I thought I was. This story, the one you're about to hear, changed all that. It's been 5 years, and sometimes on nights when the fog rolls in thick and silent, I still feel that cold dread prickling at the back of my neck. I see it all again, clear as day, like a movie reel stuck on an endless loop in my mind. And I know deep down that some things just don't have a logical explanation. Back then, I was working up north near the old logging town of Blackwood Creek. It's one of those places that looks perpetually stuck in autumn, even in the middle of summer, all rust-colored leaves and gray skies. The job was a contract to rebuild a section of an old mountain road, battered by years of harsh winters and a recent landslide. It was good money, steady work, but it meant living out of a rented cabin, surrounded by nothing but towering pines and the occasional deer. Solitude, they called it. I called it lonely. My routine was simple: up before dawn, coffee black as midnight, then a long drive in my beat-up Ford pickup to the work site. Evenings were spent cooking, reading, maybe a call home if I got a decent signal. Most nights, I'd just listen to the wind whisper through the trees and the distant hoot of an owl. It was quiet, too quiet sometimes. One of the things that always fascinated me about that area was the old ravine. It cut deep through the landscape, a jagged scar winding its way through the mountains. Locals called it the Whispering Chasm because of the strange echoes that supposedly carried on the wind down there. There was no direct route across it for miles, which made our road project even more critical. But there were old tales, whispered in the local diner over lukewarm coffee, about a hidden bridge. A stone bridge, they said, that only appeared on certain nights, usually when the fog was so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. It sounded like something out of a fairy tale or a horror movie, and I, being the sensible man I was, dismissed it as local folklore, a way to spook tourists and pass the long, dark nights. It was late October when things started to get weird. The air was getting sharper, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. Daylight was shrinking fast, and the fog, which had been an occasional visitor, became a daily companion, sometimes so dense it felt like you were driving through milk. It was a Friday night, and I decided to stay late at the site, trying to get a tricky section of concrete poured before the temperature dropped too low over the weekend. My crew had packed up hours ago, eager to get home to their families. I, on the other hand, had nowhere pressing to be. It was just me, the roar of the generator, and the looming silence of the forest. I finished around 10 o'clock, bone-tired and smelling of diesel and damp concrete. My plan was to head straight back to the cabin, grab a beer, and collapse into bed. But as I started the engine of my pickup, a thick white wall of fog rolled in, swallowing the high beams of my truck whole. It happened fast, not a gradual creep, but a sudden suffocating blanket. I'd seen thick fog before, but this was different. It felt heavy, oppressive. I knew the road like the back of my hand, but even so, this fog made everything a blur. I drove slowly, leaning forward, straining my eyes, trying to make out the faint yellow line on the asphalt. The silence outside my truck was absolute. The chirping of crickets, the rustle of leaves, all gone, muffled by the dense vapor. It was like the world had gone deaf. That's when I made my mistake. A small, almost insignificant error, but one that would change everything. Instead of taking the usual, longer route back to the cabin, which wound around the base of the mountain, I remembered an old logging trail that cut straight through the woods. It was rough, barely more than a deer path in places, but it was a shortcut, and in my exhausted state, a shortcut sounded like heaven. I'd driven it once or twice in daylight just to explore and remembered it eventually meeting up with the main road near my cabin. What could go wrong? It was just a little dirt track. Just a quick detour, I muttered to myself, turning the wheel onto the barely visible track. The headlights illuminated a tunnel of white, the fog so thick it almost seemed to have a texture. The old trail was even rougher than I remembered, strewn with fallen branches and loose rocks. My truck bounced and groaned, and I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. The trees pressed in close on either side, their upper reaches swallowed by the fog, giving the eerie impression of driving through an endless, shadowy corridor. I drove for what felt like 10 minutes, though it might have been less, maybe more. Time seemed to warp in that fog. The woods were unnervingly quiet. No animal sounds, no wind, just the crunch of my tires on gravel and the steady hum of the engine. Then, through the swirling white, something began to take shape ahead. At first, I thought it was just another clump of trees or perhaps a large boulder. But as I crept closer, my heart gave a strange little lurch. It wasn't natural. It was too structured, too deliberate. And then, through a momentary thinning in the mist, I saw it clearly. It was a bridge, a massive, ancient-looking stone bridge arching gracefully over what could only be the Whispering Chasm. But that was impossible. There wasn't supposed to be a bridge here. Not here, not on this old logging trail that led to nowhere. Not a bridge like this. It was constructed of dark, moss-covered stones, hand-hewn and fitted together with an artistry that spoke of centuries past. There were no railings, just thick, solid parapets that rose almost to my chest, and it stretched, impossibly, into the impenetrable white on the other side. It was like something plucked from a medieval painting and dropped into the heart of the modern wilderness. My foot instinctively hit the brake. The truck skidded slightly on the damp earth before coming to a complete stop. The engine idled, a lonely thrum in the vast silence. I stared, my mind scrambling to make sense of what my eyes were seeing. This wasn't on any map. I had studied topographical maps of this area thoroughly when bidding on the road project. There was no bridge marked over the ravine in this location. None. A chill, sharper than the autumn air, snaked down my spine. This wasn't just a misplaced landmark. This was wrong. The folklore, the whispers in the diner, suddenly didn't seem so quaint. My practical, logical mind tried to invent explanations. An abandoned historical site, a forgotten pioneer crossing. But the sheer scale of it, its pristine condition despite its apparent age, and the fact that I had never, ever heard a word about it from anyone who knew these woods intimately, gnawed at me. I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. The fog pressed in again, thick and hungry, trying to swallow the bridge once more, but I had seen it. And now the true silence of the forest seemed to deepen, amplifying the frantic thumping of my own heart. The air felt colder, heavier. A prickle of unease, faint at first, began to spread through my chest, a tiny seed of dread planted firmly in my gut. I hadn't just stumbled upon an old bridge. I had stumbled upon something that shouldn't exist, and the longer I looked at it, the more I felt its silent, ancient gaze pulling me in. I was alone, deep in the woods, and I had just found the bridge that crossed nowhere. My rational mind, the one that dealt with blueprints and tensile strength, was screaming. It was a phantom limb of memory, a trick of the light, a hallucination brought on by exhaustion and the heavy fog. But my eyes, wide and unblinking, showed me otherwise. The bridge was real, solid, ancient, and it beckoned, silent and massive, into the swirling gray-white beyond. I didn't move. My hands stayed locked on the steering wheel, knuckles aching. The truck's engine was the only familiar sound, a fragile anchor in a world that had suddenly tilted on its axis. The air conditioner hummed faintly, mixing with the damp chill outside. I tried to swallow, but my throat was dry, a desert. This wasn't some minor detour gone wrong. This was a fundamental breach of reality. The local legends, the old wives' tales, they weren't quaint anymore. They were suddenly, terrifyingly real. A bridge that only appeared on certain nights when the fog was thickest. I'd laughed them off, but here it was, undeniable, looming out of the impossible. A shiver traced its way down my spine, cold and sharp. This wasn't just a physical phenomenon, it felt supernatural. Like the very earth had shifted to reveal a hidden passage, a secret door to somewhere I shouldn't be. My gaze was fixed on the bridge. The stones, dark and wet with condensation, seemed to absorb the weak glow of my headlights. They were too perfect, too old, too out of place. There was no sign of modern repair, no telltale concrete patches or steel reinforcements. It was pure, unadulterated antiquity, and the silence it exuded, deeper than the fog-muffled forest, was deafening. It was the kind of silence that pressed in, that made your ears ring, that felt like a living thing listening to you. Every instinct I possessed screamed at me to reverse, to turn around, to pretend I had never seen it, to get back to the familiar, to the road, to my cabin, to anything that made sense. But another, far more primal urge, a flicker of morbid curiosity, held me captive. What was on the other side? Where did this impossible bridge lead? The stories never said, they only spoke of its appearance. I sat there for a long time, the engine idling, the fog pressing in. Minutes stretched into an eternity. My muscles were stiff, my eyes burning from staring. The cold dread had solidified in my gut, a heavy, leaden weight. This wasn't just a ghost story, this was my story now. And I was in it, whether I liked it or not. Finally, with a jolt that sent a fresh wave of adrenaline through me, I switched off the ignition. The sudden, absolute silence that followed was jarring. The world outside the truck became even more oppressive, the fog a solid, breathing entity. I swallowed hard, my heart hammering against my ribs. I couldn't just sit here. I had to know, or at least I had to try and understand. Taking a deep breath, I pushed open the truck door. The sound of the latch clicking was shockingly loud in the profound stillness. Cold, damp air rushed in, carrying the scent of pine, wet earth, and something else, something subtle and metallic, like old iron or distant rain, but also something ancient, almost dusty, as if stirred from a long sleep. It was a smell I couldn't quite place, but it felt wrong, unnatural. I swung my legs out, my boots sinking slightly into the soft, wet earth. The ground was surprisingly soft here, almost spongy, beneath a carpet of decaying leaves and moss. I stood up slowly, my eyes still fixed on the bridge. The fog swirled around my knees, making it feel like I was wading through milk. My breath plumed in the cold air, instantly dissolving into the white veil. I pulled my heavy work jacket tighter around me, its familiar weight a small comfort against the growing chill. I reached into my pocket, my fingers fumbling for my phone. No signal, of course. This place felt cut off from everything, even the invisible waves of communication. I tried to rationalize again, maybe an old quarry bridge now disused and forgot. No, the sheer size, the lack of approach roads, the whispers, it defied logic. Slowly, carefully, I took a step forward, then another. Each footfall was muffled by the damp ground, making my approach feel stealthy, as if I were a trespasser. The light from my truck's parking lamps, weak as it was, barely cut through the fog, turning the air into a shimmering, shifting curtain around me. The bridge grew larger, more imposing with every step. Its stones were not uniform. Some were massive, almost megalithic, others smaller, all fitted together with a precision that seemed impossible without modern tools, yet utterly lacking any sign of them. There was no mortar, or at least none visible. The stones seemed to simply be together, locked in an ancient embrace. As I got closer, I could make out faint carvings on some of the larger stones near the base of the parapets. Not carvings of figures or animals, but intricate, swirling patterns like Celtic knots, yet subtly different, more alien. They seemed to pulse faintly in the dim light, almost drawing the eye, twisting and turning into themselves. I reached out a hand, hesitating, then touched the cold, damp stone. It was rough, covered in a thin film of moss and lichen, but beneath that it felt impossibly smooth, polished by time or something else. It hummed with a strange, low vibration that I felt more through my fingertips than heard with my ears. A resonant frequency, a deep, silent thrum that vibrated in my bones. My heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs, my breath hitched in my throat. This wasn't just a bridge, it was an artifact. A relic from a time that shouldn't exist, an impossible testament to some forgotten craftsmanship, or perhaps something not of human hands at all. I looked down into the chasm. The fog was even denser here, a swirling maelstrom of white that completely obscured the bottom. I couldn't hear the rushing water of Blackwood Creek, which I knew flowed deep within the ravine. It was as if the chasm itself had been swallowed by the mist, leaving only an infinite white void beneath the impossible span. A dizzying sense of vertigo threatened to overwhelm me, not from height, but from the sheer, unsettling emptiness below. There was no sound at all now, no distant hoot of an owl, no rustle of unseen creatures. It was a perfect, pristine silence, broken only by the ragged sound of my own breathing. The air grew perceptibly colder as I stood at the edge of the bridge, a frigid breath that seemed to emanate from the chasm itself. It felt like standing at the mouth of an ancient tomb, a place that had been sealed for millennia and was now slowly exhaling its trapped breath. A peculiar sensation began to prickle at the back of my neck, not just cold, but a feeling of being watched. Not by something predatory, but by something immensely old, vastly indifferent, yet utterly aware. The bridge itself seemed to possess an almost sentient presence, a quiet, patient sentience that had been waiting for someone to find it, to stumble upon its hidden path. I stared into the swirling white at the other end of the bridge. It stretched for what felt like hundreds of feet, disappearing into the impenetrable mist. I couldn't see what was on the other side. More woods, an ancient ruin, or something else entirely. The rational part of my brain, though battered and bruised, tried to assert itself one last time. This was dangerous, unwise, turn back. But the other part, the part that was now completely enthralled by the impossible, urged me forward. This was a discovery, a mystery that defied everything I knew. How could I walk away from it? Taking a shaky breath, I decided I would just cross a little way, just a few steps onto the bridge itself, to feel the stone beneath my feet, to see if anything changed. A small, measured exploration, nothing reckless. I was a man of logic, after all. This was simply a scientific inquiry into an anomaly. My right foot, clad in its heavy work boot, scraped against the first stone. It was broad and flat, providing a solid purchase. The stone felt different from the earth, colder, harder, and that subtle vibration seemed to intensify slightly beneath my sole. I took another step, then another, until both feet were firmly on the bridge. The immediate change was subtle, yet profound. The air on the bridge felt different, heavier, as if saturated with time itself. The cold deepened, but it wasn't the natural chill of an autumn night. It was a bone-deep cold that seemed to bypass my jacket and sink straight into my marrow. And the silence, it wasn't just an absence of sound anymore. It was an active presence, a vast, ancient hush that seemed to hum with unspoken truths. It felt like stepping out of the world and into a secret, consecrated space. I peered back towards my truck. Its faint parking lights were already dimming, swallowed by the encroaching fog, making it appear more like a forgotten toy than a powerful piece of machinery. It looked impossibly far away, an anchor that was slipping, drifting away from me. Panic, sharp and sudden, pricked at my throat. What if the fog closed in completely? What if I couldn't find my way back? No, I told myself, steeling my resolve, I would go a little further, just to the halfway point, perhaps. Then I'd turn back. That was reasonable. That was cautious. I continued to walk, each step a deliberate effort. The carvings on the parapets grew more intricate as I moved deeper onto the bridge. They twisted and intertwined, forming patterns that seemed to shift and writhe at the edge of my vision, almost like living things. I focused on the rough texture of the stones beneath my feet, trying to ground myself in the tangible. But the bridge didn't feel tangible. It felt porous. Like it was absorbing my presence, making me part of its ancient, silent world. Halfway across, the fog was so dense I could barely see more than a few feet in front of me. The chasm below remained an unseen, gaping maw. The feeling of being watched intensified. It felt as though hundreds of eyes, ancient and unblinking, were observing my every move from the swirling mist from the very stones of the bridge. It wasn't hostile, not exactly, but profoundly unsettling, like being scrutinized by a force far beyond human comprehension. Then I heard it, a whisper, faint, ethereal, carried on a breath of icy air that seemed to come from directly above me. It wasn't words, not exactly, but a soft, sibilant sound like dry leaves skittering across stone or sand sighing in the wind. It was the whispering chasm living up to its name, but this wasn't just a natural echo. It felt deliberate, an invitation, or a warning. My breath caught in my throat. I stopped dead, every muscle tense. I strained my ears, trying to discern the sound again. Nothing. Only the profound, resonating silence. Had I imagined it, my mind, reeling from the impossibility of the bridge, was certainly capable of conjuring things. But the feeling of it, the way it had seemed to brush past my ear, felt too real to be mere imagination. I stood there, frozen, listening. The temperature dropped another notch. The fog seemed to press in even tighter, forming a cocoon of white around me. It felt like I was the only living thing in a world made of stone and mist. The strange, metallic smell grew stronger, mixed now with something else, a faint, sweet scent like decaying flowers or forgotten incense, ancient and cloying. A flicker of movement at the edge of my vision. I whipped my head around, my heart leaping into my throat. Nothing, just the swirling, shifting white. But the feeling persisted, a definite impression that something had just been there, just outside my perception. My mind screamed at me to turn back, to run, to abandon this insane quest for answers. This wasn't science, this was madness. But something held me, a desperate need to see what was beyond the fog, an inexplicable pull that felt stronger than my fear. It was like a dream where you know you're in danger but can't quite break free. I looked ahead into the opaque curtain of mist. The bridge stretched on, unwavering, into the unknown. I took another step, then another. I was no longer walking cautiously, I was being drawn. My legs felt heavy, yet compelled to move forward. The whispers returned, louder this time, not just one but many intertwining voices, like a mournful chorus of wind chimes made of bone. They were still not discernible words, but they carried a tone, a profound sadness, a lament that echoed through the very stones of the bridge and resonated deep within my chest. The sweet, cloying scent intensified, becoming almost unbearable. It mingled with the metallic tang, creating a sickening perfume that made my stomach churn. I felt lightheaded, disoriented. My vision blurred at the edges, the white fog seeming to swim and dance around me. I reached the far end of the bridge. The fog here was even thicker, a solid wall that seemed impenetrable. My hand reached out instinctively, pushing against the oppressive mist. It felt surprisingly substantial, like heavy velvet, cool and wet against my palm. Beyond the bridge, the ground was different. No longer soft earth and moss, but a cobbled path made of smaller, smoother stones that seemed to glow faintly with an inner light, a dim, phosphorescent sheen that pulsed almost imperceptibly. It was barely visible beneath the fog, but it was there, a defined path leading away from the bridge and deeper into the unknown. My truck was now completely gone, swallowed by the fog that had rolled in behind me. There was no going back, not yet, not without a guide. I was completely isolated, utterly alone, suspended between two worlds. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm, a drumbeat of pure terror and undeniable exhilaration. I stepped off the bridge onto the cobbled path. The moment my foot touched the ground, the whispers ceased. The air, though still cold and damp, felt less heavy, less saturated with ancient sadness. The sickening sweet scent receded, leaving only the metallic tang and the damp earth. It was as if I had crossed a threshold, not just from one side of a chasm to another, but from one state of being to another. The path ahead was narrow, barely wide enough for one person, winding gently through what felt like a forest, though the trees themselves were obscured by the fog. I could feel their presence, tall and silent, their branches dripping with condensed moisture. They felt different somehow, older, more gnarled, and the silence here was different too. Not the oppressive, resonant silence of the bridge, but a deep, watchful quiet, like a forest holding its breath. The faint light from the cobbled path was my only guide. I walked slowly, cautiously, my senses on high alert. Every rustle, every drip of water from the unseen branches sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I had found. Was this some forgotten, cursed land, a pocket dimension, or was I simply going insane? The path led me deeper, twisting and turning, occasionally rising over small, unseen undulations in the terrain. The trees, when I caught a glimpse of their lower trunks through the swirling mist, were unlike any I had seen in Blackwood Creek. Their bark was dark, almost black, and their forms were strangely contorted, like figures frozen in agony. Their leaves, though obscured, seemed to emit a faint, shimmering darkness rather than reflecting light. The air began to thicken again, not with fog, but with an almost palpable presence, an invisible weight that pressed down on me. The metallic tang returned, stronger this time, mingled with something else, something acrid and burnt like distant smoke or ash. I walked for what felt like an hour, though time here was a fluid, unreliable thing. The path continued its endless winding, leading me deeper into this impossible forest. The phosphorescent glow of the cobbles intensified slightly, casting eerie, shifting shadows from the unseen trees. I kept glancing behind me, half expecting the bridge to vanish or for some unseen entity to emerge from the mist. My exhaustion, which had been pushed to the background by the sheer strangeness of my situation, began to creep back in. My legs ached, my head throbbed. I longed for the familiar comfort of my truck, for the simple reality of the main road. But I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that turning back now felt even more perilous than going forward. I had stepped onto a path from which there was no easy return. Then, through the shimmering gray, I saw something, a break in the perpetual gloom. A faint, reddish-orange glow pulsating softly not far ahead. It was like embers or a distant fire, but too uniform, too steady. It offered a direction, a potential destination in this otherwise featureless landscape. My fear warred with a desperate flicker of hope. A light meant habitation, perhaps, other people, or something else entirely. But the alternative was to wander aimlessly in this surreal, fog-shrouded forest, forever lost. I quickened my pace, drawn by the eerie beacon. As I drew closer, the glow intensified, revealing its source. It wasn't a fire, it was a structure, a building of sorts, though unlike any I had ever seen. It was massive, constructed of the same dark, moss-covered stone as the bridge, but here the stones were larger, more angular, forming sharp, unnatural lines. It was a sprawling, low-slung building, almost like a collection of interlocking blocks without windows or visible doors. And from within it, through invisible seams in the stonework, emanated the reddish-orange light, pulsating with a slow, rhythmic beat like a giant, slumbering heart. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a cabin. This wasn't a logging camp. This was something ancient, alien, and deeply unsettling. The acrid, burnt smell was much stronger here, mixing with the metallic tang and the faint, cloying sweetness. It was a scent that spoke of forgotten rituals and immense, unspeakable power. The cobbled path ended abruptly at a wide, flat expanse of the same glowing stone, forming a kind of courtyard around the structure. The fog was slightly less dense here, allowing me to see the full, oppressive bulk of the building. Its scale was immense, dwarfing me. There were no discernible entrances, just sheer, seamless walls of dark stone glowing with that internal, sickly light. As I stood in the courtyard staring at the monolithic structure, the profound silence returned, even deeper than before. The whispers were gone. The strange scents were gone, replaced by a suffocating stillness that pressed in on my chest. It was as if the building itself was absorbing all sound, all light, all life, leaving only its own silent, pulsating presence. Then I noticed them, shapes etched into the flat stone courtyard around the building. Not carvings, but faint, dark lines, almost like shadows, forming intricate geometric patterns. They pulsed faintly in tandem with the building's inner glow, shifting and flowing at the very edge of my perception. As I looked closer, I realized they weren't just patterns. They were glyphs, symbols. Thousands of them covering the entire expanse of the courtyard, radiating outwards from the building like ripples in a dark pool. My mind reeled. This was far beyond anything I could have ever imagined. This was not a natural phenomenon, nor an abandoned historical site. This was a place of power, a place imbued with something ancient and profound, something utterly alien. I felt a sudden, intense cold spread through my limbs, not from the air, but from within. It was a psychic chill, a deep-seated terror that threatened to overwhelm me. This wasn't just finding a strange bridge. This was stumbling into something sacred, something forbidden, something that felt like it had been asleep for millennia and was now slowly, inexorably waking up. My eyes scanned the seamless walls of the structure, searching desperately for a way in or a way out. There was nothing, just the pulsating reddish-orange light from within, the silent, watching stones, and the swirling, oppressive fog that continued to hide the true extent of this impossible place. As I stood there trembling, an even stranger sensation began to manifest. It was a pressure not on my body but in my mind, a gentle, insistent probing like an unseen hand reaching into the deepest corners of my thoughts. It was silent, yet utterly clear, and it conveyed a single, terrifying message: you are seen. I recoiled, stumbling backwards a step, my hands flying to my temples as if to ward off the mental intrusion. It wasn't aggressive, not yet, but undeniably there, an intelligence assessing me, measuring me, and utterly unlike anything I had ever encountered. It was old, infinitely old, and it was awake. My heart hammered against my ribs, a desperate drumbeat against the overwhelming silence. My body screamed at me to flee, but there was nowhere to go. The fog had swallowed my path back to the bridge, and this monstrous structure loomed before me, its silent, glowing presence demanding attention. I was trapped, a fly in a web woven of ancient stone and impossible mist. Then the pulsating light from within the building intensified. The reddish-orange glow brightened, then flared, becoming a blinding, fiery crimson. The air crackled with unseen energy, a high-pitched hum building in my ears, making my teeth ache. The glyphs on the courtyard floor glowed fiercely, their dark lines now burning with the same crimson light, writhing and twisting like living script. A low, resonant sound began to emanate from the building itself. It was not a whisper nor a lament, but a deep, guttural thrum, vibrating through the ground, through the soles of my boots, up my legs, and into my very bones. It was a sound that seemed to shake the very fabric of reality, a profound, ancient roar that was both sound and vibration, power and presence. It filled the air, the fog, my head, drowning out all thought, all reason. And as the crimson light flared, a section of the seamless wall before me, a colossal slab of dark stone, began to retract inward, sliding silently and impossibly into the depths of the structure, revealing a gaping, black doorway. Beyond the doorway, the light was even more intense, a swirling vortex of crimson and shadow that pulsed and writhed with a terrifying, ethereal energy. I could glimpse fleeting, impossible shapes within, shifting and indistinct, like echoes of things that shouldn't be. The acrid, burnt smell rushed out, stronger than ever, hot and suffocating, mingling with the metallic tang and the cloying sweetness, creating a miasma that threatened to choke me. I stood there, paralyzed by a terror so profound it transcended fear and became a fundamental shattering of my understanding of the world. My knees buckled. I fell to the ground, my hands braced against the glowing, vibrating cobbles, my eyes fixed on the impossibly dark, impossibly luminous maw of the open doorway. The pressure in my mind intensified, no longer a gentle probe, but a forceful, undeniable presence. It wasn't communicating words, but a raw, undeniable pull. An ancient, irresistible summons. It didn't demand, it simply drew. And I felt myself, against every fiber of my being, beginning to rise. My muscles burned, screaming in protest, but I was no longer in control. Some unseen force was lifting me, drawing me inexorably towards the crimson vortex, towards the unimaginable horrors that lurked within. My vision blurred, the world tilting violently. The ground beneath me felt insubstantial, giving way. The air was thick, suffocating. I tried to scream, but no sound escaped my burning throat. My practical, grounded self, the man of steel and concrete, was unraveling, disintegrating under the assault of this impossible reality. As I was dragged forward, closer and closer to the threshold of the crimson maw, I caught a glimpse of something in the swirling light within. A shape, vague, colossal, indistinct, yet undeniably there. It was immense, like a mountain of shifting shadows, crowned with something that resembled countless unblinking eyes that stared directly back at me into the deepest recesses of my soul. And from those eyes, an overwhelming sense of ancient hunger, a primordial craving, washed over me, chilling me to the very core of my being. I was being pulled into the darkness, into the heart of this impossible place, towards a fate far worse than anything I could have ever imagined. My last thought before the swirling crimson consumed me entirely was a desperate, unvoiced plea for escape, for a return to the simple, mundane reality I had so carelessly dismissed just hours before. But the world I knew was gone, and I was now irrevocably bound to the nightmare I had so foolishly stumbled upon. The threshold had been crossed, and there was no turning back. The crimson maw swallowed me whole. It wasn't a gentle absorption, but a violent, tearing sensation, as if my very atoms were being ripped apart and reassembled. Sound ceased to exist, replaced by a deafening roar that vibrated through every cell of my body, a cacophony of impossible frequencies. Light exploded around me, a dizzying kaleidoscope of crimson, black, and ethereal violet, shifting and swirling with a terrifying, liquid intensity. I felt weightless, tumbling through an endless void, yet simultaneously crushed by an immense, unseen pressure. My senses rebelled, overwhelmed by the sheer wrongness of it all. It was like being reborn, or perhaps unmade. Then, as suddenly as it began, the maelstrom subsided. I hit solid ground with a jarring thud that knocked the wind out of me, sending a fresh wave of pain through my already protesting body. I lay there, gasping, trying to claw back some semblance of air into my lungs. My vision was swimming, speckled with lingering afterimages of the crimson vortex. The roar had faded, replaced by a profound, echoing silence, broken only by the frantic hammering of my own heart against my ribs. Slowly, agonizingly, I pushed myself up onto my hands and knees, my muscles screaming in protest. The floor beneath me was cold, smooth stone, slick with a fine layer of condensation. It glowed faintly, not with the pulsing reddish-orange from outside, but with a dim internal luminescence that seemed to emanate from the very material itself, casting long, wavering shadows. As my eyes adjusted, the horror of my surroundings solidified. I was in an immense chamber, a colossal cavern carved from the same dark, impossible stone as the exterior of the structure. The ceiling stretched upwards into an unseen darkness, lost somewhere far above, hinting at impossible height. The walls were seamless, curving gently inwards as they rose, giving the impression of being inside some vast, petrified egg. The air here was still and heavy, devoid of any natural breeze, yet it carried a faint, persistent scent. It was a complex aroma, a sickening blend of the familiar metallic tang, the cloying sweetness of decay, and something else entirely, a sharp, almost electrical ozone smell like the air after a lightning strike, but infinitely more potent. It prickled at the back of my throat, making my eyes water. The light, though dim, was sufficient to reveal the true scale of the chamber. It stretched further than my eyes could see, receding into the gloom, but it wasn't empty. Scattered across the vast expanse of the floor like forgotten debris were colossal pillars. Not support pillars, but monolithic structures, each one easily 3 or 4 times the height of my truck and as wide as a small house. They were sculpted from the same dark, glowing stone, their surfaces etched with the same swirling, alien glyphs I'd seen outside, though here they were more pronounced, deeper, almost three-dimensional. They pulsed faintly, synchronously with the light from the floor, casting bizarre, dancing shadows that seemed to writhe with a life of their own. My gaze was drawn to the center of the chamber, where the concentration of pillars was thickest. There, amidst the forest of silent giants, something else loomed. It was immense, even larger than the pillars, a central monument of some kind. Its shape was indistinct in the dim, shifting light, a colossal dark mass that seemed to absorb what little illumination there was, an abyss within an abyss. But I could make out a sense of unnatural symmetry, of impossible geometry. And even from this distance, I felt its presence, a profound, crushing weight that settled directly onto my mind. This was the source of the mental pressure, the colossal, unblinking eyes I had glimpsed through the vortex. This was the ancient hunger. My body began to tremble uncontrollably, a deep, bone-rattling shiver that had nothing to do with cold. It was pure, unadulterated terror, primal and overwhelming. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to run, to flee, to somehow escape this nightmare. But there was nowhere to go. The doorway through which I'd entered had vanished, the seamless wall having closed behind me with a silent finality. I was trapped. I tried to push myself further up to stand, but my legs felt like jelly, unable to support my weight. I sank back down, scrambling backwards on my hands and knees, dragging myself away from the monstrous central mass. My eyes darted around, desperately searching for an exit, a crack, anything that offered a sliver of hope. There was nothing, just the endless, curving walls of dark, glowing stone. The silence was absolute, a heavy blanket that pressed down on my ears, making them ache. It was not the quiet of nature, but the utter absence of all sound, all life, all breath. It was the silence of a tomb, a crypt of forgotten gods, a place where time itself held no meaning. As I huddled there, my mind racing, I noticed something else. The glowing floor beneath me. The light wasn't constant. It intensified and dimmed in a slow, rhythmic pulse, mirroring the beat I'd felt from outside the structure. And with each pulse, the glyphs etched into the pillars and walls seemed to subtly shift, to rearrange themselves like a complex, ever-changing language of light and shadow. My gaze fell upon one of the closer pillars. As the light pulsed, I noticed that some of the glyphs within the swirling pattern seemed to stand out, to hold a more distinct glow. They formed crude, almost pictorial representations, fleeting and indistinct. I squinted, trying to make sense of the shifting images. They appeared to depict forms vaguely humanoid, yet utterly alien, with elongated limbs and multiple eyes. They were worshipping, or perhaps serving, a larger, more ambiguous entity. My blood ran colder. These weren't mere decorations. These were hieroglyphs, a record, a history, of whatever had built this place and whatever it worshipped. The mental pressure intensified again, a cold, probing touch deep within my thoughts. It wasn't just a general presence now. It felt more focused, more direct, as if an unseen entity was examining me, dissecting my memories, my fears, my very essence. I could feel it sifting through my mind, a violation more profound than any physical assault. It was trying to understand me, and in doing so, it was stripping away all my defenses, leaving me exposed and vulnerable. A wave of nausea washed over me, and I clutched my head, groaning. It was like a migraine, but originating from within my skull, a blinding pain that threatened to shatter my consciousness. "You are an intruder," the silent thought echoed in my mind, not in words, but in pure, unfiltered intent. An anomaly, unplanned. The words, though unspoken, were clear as a bell, and they brought with them a profound sense of isolation. I wasn't just lost, I was an unwanted presence, a mistake in a place of ancient, terrifying order. I forced myself to my feet, swaying precariously, using a nearby pillar for support. The stone was smooth and cold beneath my trembling hand, vibrating with that subtle, deep thrum. I had to move. I couldn't just stand here and be consumed, mentally or otherwise. There had to be a way out. Clinging to the pillar, I began to shuffle sideways, cautiously moving deeper into the chamber, hoping against hope to find a passage, an opening, anything. The glowing floor provided just enough light to navigate, but it also made every step feel exposed, as if I were walking across a stage under the scrutiny of unseen eyes. The pillars formed a loose, irregular maze, forcing me to weave my way through them. Each one was a silent sentinel, its glyphs swirling and shifting with the pulses of light, telling a story I couldn't comprehend but which filled me with a sickening dread. I kept my eyes fixed ahead, trying to avoid glancing at the colossal, dark mass at the chamber's center, but its presence was a constant, crushing weight on my awareness. It was a gravitational pull for the mind, drawing all thought, all fear, all existence towards itself. As I ventured deeper, the character of the chamber subtly changed. The pillars became more numerous, closer together, forming narrower passages. The air grew even heavier, the electrical tang more pronounced, making the hairs on my arms stand on end. And the silence, which I thought absolute, began to fray at the edges. Faintly, almost imperceptibly at first, a new sound entered the oppressive quiet. It was a low, resonant hum far deeper than the subtle thrumming of the stones, a sound that seemed to originate from the very fabric of the chamber itself. It wasn't a mechanical hum, nor a natural one. It was organic, almost alive, a sound that felt like the slow, deep exhalation of something impossibly vast and ancient. It vibrated in my chest, rattling my teeth, a sound that bypassed my ears and went straight into my bones. I stopped, pressing myself against a cold pillar, trying to discern the source. The hum seemed to emanate from all directions, yet also from a specific point, the central mass. It was its breath, its heartbeat, a terrifying manifestation of its awakened presence. As the hum intensified, so did the mental pressure. It was no longer a probe, but a torrent, an undeniable presence flooding my mind. Images, fleeting and disjointed, flashed through my consciousness. Vast, empty stellar nurseries, impossible geometries shifting in dimensions beyond human grasp, countless silent witnesses, myriad eyes observing the slow decay of galaxies. It was a glimpse into an alien consciousness, a mind so ancient and vast it threatened to obliterate my own. I cried out a strangled sound that was instantly swallowed by the overwhelming hum. My hands flew to my ears, but it was useless. The sound was inside me, not outside. I squeezed my eyes shut, desperately trying to block out the invading thoughts, the impossible visions. My knees buckled and I slid down the pillar, collapsing onto the glowing floor. When I opened my eyes again, the hum was still there, but subtly different. It felt like it was receding, though still very much present. The mental assault had lessened, leaving me dazed and disoriented, my head throbbing with an unbearable pain. I felt drained, emptied, as if a part of me had been siphoned away. But something else had changed. The air around me was no longer still. A faint, almost imperceptible current stirred, carrying with it a new scent, a faint, sweet, floral aroma, delicate and strangely out of place amidst the metallic and burnt tangs. It was the smell of lilies or some other deeply fragrant flower, but aged, preserved beyond time. It was the same cloying sweetness I'd noticed on the bridge, but now more distinct. I pushed myself up again, my body heavy and uncooperative. My eyes, still blurry, scanned the pillars around me. My heart gave a sudden lurch. The glyphs on the nearest pillars were no longer just abstract patterns. They were depicting specific scenes, vivid and horrifying. One showed what looked like a ritual. Vaguely humanoid figures, their bodies elongated and gaunt, with multiple joints and disproportionately large heads, were prostrating themselves before an altar. On the altar lay another figure, clearly human, bound in splayed, blood-red glyphs painted on its chest. Above them, a shadowy, multi-limbed entity with too many eyes hovered, its essence seeming to flow into the bound human. The glyphs around the scene pulsed with a sickening crimson. Another panel depicted a different scene. The alien figures, these ones more robust, operating impossibly intricate machinery. Tubes and conduits pulsed with liquid light, connecting to vast, crystal-like structures that hummed with energy. And at the heart of it all, a smaller, darker version of the central entity, pulsing with dim, reddish light, being fed by the energy flowing through the contraptions. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just a place of power, it was a place of sacrifice, of exploitation. The ancient hunger wasn't just a metaphor, it was real, and these pictographs were telling a story of how it was sated. I was no longer just an intruder, I was a potential offering. Panic, cold and absolute, seized me. I had to get out. Now, I pushed away from the pillar, abandoning caution, and started to run. Not really running, more of a stumbling, desperate jog through the maze of pillars. My heavy work boots clattered on the smooth, glowing stone, the sound echoing strangely in the vast chamber, instantly swallowed by the omnipresent hum. I didn't know where I was going, only that it had to be away from the central mass, away from the terrifying revelations etched into the walls. The pillars flashed past me, each one a silent observer, its glyphs morphing and shifting as I ran, as if alive, watching my desperate flight. The air, though still heavy, seemed to grow thicker, almost viscous, making each breath a struggle. The electrical tang intensified, building to a crackling roar that drowned out even the hum. Then, ahead of me, a break in the seemingly endless array of pillars. a wide, open expanse leading towards what looked like another wall. My heart leaped with a desperate surge of hope. A wall meant an end to this section of the chamber. Perhaps an exit, a corridor. I burst into the clearing, skidding to a halt. My hope evaporated, replaced by a fresh wave of despair. It wasn't an exit, it was a pit. A gaping maw had opened in the center of the vast clearing, a perfectly circular void easily 50 feet across. It plunged downwards into an impenetrable blackness, absorbing all light, all sound, all hope. The air above it shimmered with heat, distorting the already dim illumination. And from within, emanating from the terrifying depths, came an acrid, sulfurous smell like burnt ozone and molten rock, infinitely more potent than anything I'd smelled before. It stung my eyes, burned my nostrils, and made me gag uncontrollably. Around the edge of the pit, carefully spaced, were colossal, dark, metallic platforms, each one connected by narrow, glowing bridges made of the same stone as the floor. On each platform, massive, alien machinery stood silent, its surface covered in the same pulsating glyphs, but here they glowed with a sickly, iridescent green. They were immense, complex contraptions of unknown purpose, resembling monstrous, archaic engines, their true function utterly beyond my comprehension. Thick, glowing conduits snaked from these machines, disappearing into the depths of the pit. And then I saw the figures. They stood motionless on the platforms, tending to the machines. The same elongated, gaunt humanoids from the pictographs. They were tall, easily 7 feet, their bodies thin and almost skeletal, draped in dark, flowing robes that seemed to absorb the faint light. Their heads were disproportionately large, smooth, and hairless, with unsettlingly wide, dark eyes that reflected the dim glow like polished obsidian. Their limbs were long and multi-jointed, ending in slender, clawed hands. They were utterly silent, their movements, when they made any, slow and deliberate, like figures in a dream. One of them, positioned on a platform directly across the pit from me, slowly turned its head, its wide, dark eyes fixed on me. There was no visible mouth, no discernible features that expressed emotion, but I felt its awareness, a cold, alien intelligence that penetrated my very core. It simply watched, silent and unblinking. My breath hitched in my throat. These weren't just carvings, they were real, and they knew I was here. The electrical crackle in the air intensified, merging with the deafening hum that seemed to emanate from the pit itself. The sulfurous smell became unbearable, burning my lungs. I felt a pressure building in my head, a sensation like my brain was being squeezed. The ground beneath me began to vibrate, a deep, resonant tremor that made the colossal machines on the platforms hum louder, their green glyphs flashing erratically. The silent humanoid across the pit slowly raised one of its elongated, clawed hands. It pointed directly at me. A high-pitched, piercing shriek erupted from the depths of the pit, a sound that tore through the air, shattering the pervasive hum and rattling the very stone. It wasn't an animalistic shriek. It was something metallic, unnatural, yet imbued with an ancient, predatory malice. It was a sound that made every nerve ending in my body ignite with raw, unadulterated terror. I scrambled backwards away from the edge of the pit, my heart pounding so violently I thought it would burst from my chest. The other robed figures on the platforms, previously motionless, now turned as one, their obsidian eyes fixing on me. Their movements were fluid, unnervingly smooth, like shadows gliding across the stone. The creature from the pit shrieked again, longer this time, a sustained wail that echoed off the unseen ceiling. And then, slowly, agonizingly, something began to emerge from the blackness. First, a faint reddish-orange glow like molten rock pulsed from the depths. Then immense, segmented limbs, easily the size of tree trunks, slowly clawed their way over the lip of the pit. They were covered in dark, metallic plates, scaly and sharp, ending in razor-tipped talons that scraped against the stone with a grinding, horrific sound that sent shivers down my spine. The creature was immense, a monstrosity of impossible scale, its body obscured by the shadows and the overwhelming, acrid heat that now radiated from the pit. I couldn't make out its full form, but the glimpse I got was enough to send my mind spiraling into madness. Too many limbs, too many joints, an alien anatomy that defied all biological understanding. It was a nightmare-given form, a primordial entity that had slumbered in the heart of this impossible structure, now roused by my presence. The robed figures on the platforms remained utterly motionless, their gaze fixed on me, silent witnesses to my impending doom. They made no move to stop the creature, no attempt to intervene. They were simply observing. The mental pressure was back, a searing, white-hot probe that drilled into my skull. This time, it wasn't just a sense of "you are seen." It was a clear, undeniable command emanating from the central entity, amplified by the rising monstrosity: offer yourself. I stumbled backwards again, blindly, desperately, trying to put distance between myself and the emerging horror. My legs tangled, and I went down hard, scraping my hands and knees on the unforgiving stone. I could feel the heat from the pit washing over me, the air growing thick and suffocating. The sulfur smell was so strong now I felt my stomach clench, threatening to expel its contents. My eyes, wide with terror, scanned the vast chamber again. There had to be a way out. A crack, a hidden door, anything, but there was nothing. Only the impassive walls, the silent pillars, the towering machines, and the robed figures, all silently watching as the monster from the pit slowly, inexorably rose. As it continued to emerge, the full horror of its face became visible. It was a nightmare of obsidian and fire, a jagged, chitinous skull with far too many eyes, glowing crimson orbs of various sizes, clustered together in a grotesque mockery of a face. Its mouth was a fanged maw, dripping with an unknown, incandescent fluid that hissed and smoked as it hit the cold stone. The creature let out another shriek, a sound of pure, unadulterated hunger. It began to pull itself entirely out of the pit, its immense, multi-jointed body revealing itself in the dim, glowing light. It was insectoid in parts, reptilian in others, with sections of what looked like hardened rock and glowing internal veins. It was colossal, filling the space above the pit, dwarfing the silent, robed figures, its shadow stretching across the entire clearing, falling over me like a pall. I closed my eyes, a strangled sob escaping my lips. This was it. This was where my impossible journey ended. My practical, grounded world had been shattered, and now I was about to become fodder for an ancient, alien monstrosity in a place that shouldn't exist. Then, through the cacophony of shrieks, the deafening hum, and the overwhelming mental pressure, something else penetrated my terror-stricken mind. A faint, almost imperceptible sound, a high-pitched whine, coming from somewhere far off, from the very edge of the chamber. It was subtle, easily mistaken for the building's own impossible machinery, but it was different. It was familiar. I forced my eyes open, desperation overriding despair. I strained my ears, trying to isolate the sound amidst the chaos. The robed figures remained fixated on me. The monster from the pit was almost fully emerged, its fanged maw dripping, its multitude of eyes burning with malevolent hunger. The whine grew infinitesimally louder. It was a metallic whine, rising and falling like a struggling engine. No, not struggling, spinning up. A faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through the stone floor beneath me. The glowing glyphs on the pillars and walls began to flicker erratically, their pulses becoming more rapid, more intense. The light in the chamber brightened slightly, then dimmed again, as if the entire structure was struggling, reacting to something external. The creature from the pit paused its emergence, its multifaceted eyes sweeping across the chamber, its fanged maw closing with a sickening click. It seemed to be listening, sensing. The mental pressure on my mind lessened, the urgent command for sacrifice momentarily replaced by a confused, almost angry probing. The robed figures stirred. Their movements, previously slow and deliberate, became agitated. They started to gesture with their clawed hands, their bodies swaying, their obsidian eyes darting around the chamber as if searching for the source of the new disturbance. A low, guttural murmur rippled through their ranks, the first sound I'd heard from them, a chilling, collective utterance that was almost a growl. The whine intensified, rising in pitch like a jet engine preparing for takeoff, but alien, distorted. And then, a colossal section of the curving wall, far across the chamber, directly opposite the pit, began to glow with a furious, pulsating red light. The glyphs on that section of the wall flared violently, like brands. A deafening roar erupted from that section of the wall, a sound of tearing stone and immense force. A massive fissure ripped open, radiating outwards from the glowing point, accompanied by an explosion of light and a cloud of dust and debris. The entire chamber shook violently, sending tremors through the floor, making the pillars sway. I clutched the ground, my head ringing, trying to brace myself against the onslaught. Through the dust and the blinding light, I caught a glimpse of something tearing its way into the structure. Not something organic, not some other creature, something constructed, something I recognized. It was a drill bit, massive, easily 30 feet in diameter, churning with impossible speed, biting into the impossibly hard, glowing stone as if it were mere earth. Behind it, a colossal shaft made of dull, reinforced steel pounded its way into the opening. The robed figures shrieked, a chorus of guttural, desperate cries. They abandoned their positions around the pit, scrambling, gliding with unnatural speed towards the newly breached wall, their long robes flowing behind them like shadows. The monster from the pit, still half emerged, let out a frustrated, enraged bellow, its crimson eyes fixed on the intrusion, its multiple limbs thrashing violently, sending sprays of incandescent fluid onto the floor. The mental pressure on my mind vanished entirely, replaced by a chaotic jumble of alien emotions, rage, confusion, alarm, and something akin to desperation. The central entity, the source of the original hunger, was reacting to this new, unforeseen threat. It was no longer interested in me. I lay there stunned, my mind struggling to process the impossible. What was happening? Who or what was breaking into this ancient, alien structure? And how could anything of the human world even touch this place? The drill bit continued its relentless assault, grinding its way further into the wall, showering the chamber with sparks and stone fragments. Behind it, the dull, reinforced steel shaft advanced, followed by another and another, slowly extending into the breach. And then, from within the newly created tunnel, a voice boomed, amplified by an unseen speaker, cutting through the dying shrieks of the robed figures and the enraged bellows of the pit monster. It was a human voice, gravelly and filled with a grim determination. All right, boys, we've got penetration, hold formation, remember the protocol, no hesitation, clear the approach. My jaw dropped. A human voice, not just any human voice, but one that spoke with authority, with military precision. It sounded like something out of an action movie, utterly out of place in this nightmare. As the drill bit finally ceased its rotation and retracted slightly, revealing a wider opening, figures started to pour through the breach. They were human, dressed in heavy armored suits, their faces obscured by helmets with glowing visors. They carried heavy, futuristic-looking weapons and moved with a brutal, synchronized efficiency that spoke of extensive training and countless missions. They were soldiers. My mind reeled, soldiers here in this place. They fanned out, their glowing visors sweeping across the chamber, their weapons held ready. The robed figures, caught off guard, were met with a storm of concentrated fire. Beams of raw energy, crackling with electric blue light, erupted from the soldiers' weapons, slamming into the alien humanoids. The robed figures, despite their unnerving speed, were not invulnerable. When hit, they exploded in a shower of black ichor and dissipating shadows, their screams cut short. The monster from the pit roared again, an ear-splitting bellow of pure fury, and lunged forward, immense multi-jointed limbs propelling it towards the new invaders. It was met by a volley of heavier, more destructive fire. Explosions rocked its chitinous hide, sending sparks and fragments flying. It staggered but kept advancing, its crimson eyes burning with hatred. One of the armored soldiers, clearly the leader by the insignia on his shoulder, his voice now clearer as he moved into the chamber, shouted into his comms, "Alpha Team, focus on the primary target. Delta Team, suppress the lesser entities, secure the perimeter. Move." He pointed his weapon, a massive, blocky rifle that glowed with an internal blue light, directly at the central mass, the immense, shadowy entity that was the source of all the evil. Primary target acquired, open fire. A torrent of energy beams, larger and more potent than those used against the robed figures, slammed into the central entity. The ancient monolith, previously impervious, shuddered. The glowing glyphs on its surface flared violently, then dimmed as if struggling. A low, guttural groan, not a sound but a sensation of immense pain, resonated through the chamber, vibrating in my very bones. My brain was struggling to keep up. This was all too much. A secret, impossible bridge leading to an ancient, alien structure housing a monstrous entity and its robed servants, now being invaded by futuristic human soldiers with energy weapons. It defied every single law of physics, every single aspect of reality I had ever known. I watched, mesmerized and terrified, as the battle raged. The soldiers were highly effective, their movements precise, their weaponry devastating. The robed figures, despite their numbers, were being systematically cut down, their strange forms dissolving into nothingness. The monster from the pit, though immense and terrifying, was taking heavy damage, its armored hide visibly cracking under the sustained assault. Amidst the chaos, a single soldier, part of a flanking team, advanced towards the area near the pit, clearing out stragglers. As he did, his glowing visor swept past my position, where I was still huddled, forgotten, against a pillar. He paused, his head tilting slightly. "Hold!" His voice crackled over the comms, clearly audible even amidst the battle. "Hold fire on my mark. I have an unconfirmed human in the field." The firing lessened for a moment, the energy blasts dying down to a scattered few. The battle, though still raging, paused just enough for the attention to shift. The soldier, a tall, powerfully built man whose armored suit seemed to hum with contained energy, walked cautiously towards me. His weapon remained raised, but his posture was less aggressive, more assessing. "Civilian," he barked, his voice muffled by his helmet but laced with surprise. "What in the hell are you doing here?" I could only stare at him, my mouth agape, unable to form a single coherent word. My throat was dry, my mind a jumbled mess of fear and disbelief. He was real. These soldiers were real, and they were here. The soldier reached me, his towering form casting a long shadow over me. He lowered his weapon slightly, though his stance remained vigilant. His visor glowed a steady blue, making it impossible to see his face. "Can you speak, civilian? Are you injured?" I managed a choked sound, a desperate gasp for air. I don't." Before I could finish, a guttural shriek echoed from the other side of the clearing. The monster from the pit, despite its injuries, had gathered its strength. With a roar of pure defiance, it launched itself towards the central entity, seemingly trying to protect it from the soldiers' relentless assault. Its immense body slammed into a line of armored men, scattering them like ragdolls. "Contact, we have contact," a voice screamed over the comms. "It's going for the heart, fall back, regroup." The soldier in front of me swore. "Stay here, civilian, don't move," he ordered, his voice sharper now. He raised his weapon and sprinted back into the fray, his armored boots thudding on the glowing stone. The battle reignited with renewed ferocity. Energy blasts slammed into the pit monster, tearing chunks from its metallic hide. The central entity pulsed violently, its deep groan now a continuous, agonizing thrum. The soldiers, though professional, were clearly facing something beyond their usual parameters. I watched, frozen in place, as the monster, despite its size, moved with surprising speed, its multi-jointed limbs ripping through the soldiers' formations. Its crimson eyes burned with a renewed ferocity, and its fanged maw snapped shut on one unfortunate soldier, crushing him with sickening ease. Then from the central entity, the immense, shadowy monolith, a new sound emanated. Not a groan, not a hum, but a high-pitched, resonant keening, a sound that seemed to tear at the very fabric of reality. The energy blasts striking it seemed to lose their potency, dissipating into nothingness. The glyphs on its surface began to glow with a blinding, white-hot intensity, radiating immense heat. The leader of the soldiers, the one who had spoken first, shouted, "It's activating, fall back, now we need to pull the core charges." But it was too late. The central entity flared, erupting in a silent, blinding flash of pure, white energy. A concussive wave, visible as a shimmering distortion in the air, rippled outwards from it, slamming into everything in its path. I was thrown backwards, sent skidding across the glowing floor, my head striking a pillar with sickening force. A blinding pain lanced through my skull, followed by an immediate rush of darkness. The sounds of battle, the keening, the roars, the energy blasts, all faded into a dull, distant roar, then silence. My vision narrowed, blurring, the glowing stone and the monstrous forms around me dissolving into indistinct shapes of light and shadow. My last conscious thought before the darkness swallowed me completely was of the overwhelming force, the sheer, unimaginable power radiating from the central entity. It wasn't just defending itself, it was awakening. And whatever it was far, far beyond anything these soldiers or any human force could hope to contain. I felt a profound sense of despair, not just for myself, but for the world I had left behind. This secret, impossible place with its ancient horrors was now breached, and the consequences, I knew with a chilling certainty, would be catastrophic. The line between my mundane reality and this nightmare had not just been crossed, it had been utterly obliterated. A long time later, or perhaps no time at all, I became aware of a dull, throbbing ache at the back of my head. It was a familiar pain, grounding me, pulling me back from the infinite void. I heard sounds, muffled and indistinct at first, then slowly sharpening into clarity. A low, rhythmic beeping, the rustle of fabric, distant voices. My eyelids felt impossibly heavy, glued shut. I struggled, straining, trying to force them open. A sliver of light, then another, pierced the darkness. My eyes burned, assaulted by the sudden, harsh illumination. I squeezed them shut again, groaning softly. "He's coming around," a voice said, low and steady, close by. It was a male voice, calm and professional. "Monitor vitals, keep him sedated if he starts to panic." Another voice, female, crisp and efficient. Sedated, panic, what were they talking about? I tried again, forcing my eyes open, blinking rapidly against the glare. My vision swam, but slowly details began to emerge. I was lying on something soft, yet firm. A bed. The room was sterile, white, filled with strange, glowing equipment. Tubes ran from my arm to bags suspended above me. Wires were attached to my chest, leading to a monitor that beeped softly beside the bed. A hospital. I was in a hospital, but how could I have gotten here, and where was here? A figure leaned over me, a woman in a crisp white lab coat, her face partially obscured by a surgical mask and a pair of spectacles. Her eyes, however, were keen and intelligent, assessing me with an almost clinical detachment. "Welcome back." The woman's voice was calm, almost unnervingly so. "Welcome back," she repeated, her eyes unwavering behind the spectacles. "How are you feeling, mister?" She paused, clearly expecting me to fill in the blank. My throat was parched, rough as sandpaper. I tried to speak, but only a croak emerged. The dull ache in my head persisted, a constant reminder of the pillar, the blast, the impossible battle. My memory was a swirling vortex of alien glyphs, energy weapons, and unimaginable monsters. "Water," I rasped, finally managing a full word. She nodded, turning to a side table. A clear plastic cup with a straw was offered to me. My hand trembled as I reached for it, the simplest action feeling like an immense effort. The water was cool, a blessing that soothed my burning throat. I drank deeply, my eyes never leaving her. "Thank you," I managed, my voice a little stronger. "Where am I? What happened?" The woman removed her mask, revealing a sharp, intelligent face framed by short, practical blonde hair. "You're safe, Mr. Carter. For now, you're in a secure medical facility." She held up a hand as I tried to interrupt. "My name is Dr. Eris Thorne. I'm the lead medical officer here." My name, she knew my name, my truck, my wallet. They must have found it. "Carter," I confirmed, pushing myself up slightly, wincing at the strain. The wires on my chest tugged. "Secure medical facility, where is here? And what about everything else? The building, the monsters, the soldiers?" My voice rose with each question, the panic threatening to resurface. Dr. Thorne's expression remained calm, but her eyes held a hint of steel. "I understand you have many questions, Mr. Carter, and we will get to them. But first, we need to ensure your physical and mental stability. You've been through a significant trauma, and you've been unconscious for quite some time." How long? I demanded, a cold knot forming in my stomach. 3 weeks, she stated, her voice flat. You sustained severe head trauma, significant lacerations, and numerous contusions. You also exhibited signs of extreme psychological shock and a unique form of energy exposure that we are still analyzing. 3 weeks, my world had disappeared for 3 weeks. My family, my work, my entire life swallowed by an impossible chasm. 3 weeks, I whispered, the words tasting like ash. The soldiers, they saved me. Dr. Thorne hesitated, her gaze flickering. They extracted you, yes. You were found unconscious near one of the primary support pillars, relatively clear of the immediate blast radius. Blast radius, what blast? The central entity, what happened to it? The monster from the pit, I pressed, a torrent of desperate questions tumbling out. She sighed, a subtle shift in her otherwise composed demeanor. The central entity underwent a catastrophic energy discharge, a complete system overload, likely triggered by our breach in the subsequent engagement. It created a localized spatial temporal distortion field before collapsing in on itself. As for the monster from the pit, as you call it, it was neutralized by our forces during the retreat. The lesser entities, the robed figures, were also eliminated. Neutralized, collapsed in on itself. The words were too clean, too clinical for the cosmic horror I had witnessed. Retreat, I latched onto the word. You retreated, you didn't destroy it. We contained it, Mr. Carter, she corrected, her voice firm. We sealed the chamber. The threat is localized for now. Our primary objective was data acquisition and containment, not necessarily outright destruction, especially of an entity of that magnitude and unknown origin. It's too unpredictable. Containment, I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. It felt like it was going to swallow the entire world. It was attempting to, she replied, her eyes narrowing. That's why we were there, to prevent a full-scale awakening. You knew about it, I asked, my mind reeling. You knew about the bridge, the structure, all of it. Our organization, yes, she admitted, a subtle tension in her jaw. For decades, generations even, we track, study, and when necessary, contain such anomalies. The Blackwood Creek anomaly has been on our watch list for a very long time, though its exact location remained elusive until recently. Blackwood Creek anomaly, I repeated, the clinical term making the impossible feel chillingly real. Who are you people? What organization? We are known as the Aegis Initiative, Dr. Thorne stated, her voice now imbued with a quiet authority. An extra-governmental, highly classified research and containment agency. We operate beyond the purview of conventional governments dedicated to safeguarding humanity from threats that lie beyond the veil of common understanding. Aegis Initiative, beyond the veil. It sounded like something out of a pulp fiction novel, yet here I was, living it. My pragmatic mind, the one that dealt with blueprints and structural integrity, screamed in protest. So you just keep these things secret from the world? For the safety of the world, Mr. Carter, she responded, her tone softening slightly. Imagine the panic, the societal collapse if the true nature of reality and the threats lurking within it were suddenly thrust upon the global population. Humanity is not ready. It may never be. I thought of the impossible bridge, the whispering chasm, the contorted trees, the silent, glowing monolith, the hunger, the screeching monster, the multi-eyed entity. She was right. The world wasn't ready. I certainly hadn't been. What now? I asked, a profound weariness settling over me. Am I a prisoner? You can't just let me go knowing what I know, can you? Dr. Thorne's gaze was direct, unwavering. That is a complex question, Mr. Carter. You've witnessed things no one outside Aegis is meant to see. You've been exposed to energies and entities that defy our most advanced understanding. Your physiological and neurological markers are unique. You're a variable, a wild card, and frankly, a potential liability. A potential liability? That didn't sound good. So what does that mean for me? I swallowed hard. Am I going to be debriefed, mind-wiped, eliminated? The last word was a whisper, but it hung heavy in the sterile air. Dr. Thorne let out a short, humorless laugh. We don't eliminate civilians, Mr. Carter, not unless absolutely necessary. And mind-wiping is a far more complex and imprecise procedure than Hollywood suggests. Besides, she paused, a strange glint in her eyes, your unique exposure makes any attempt at conventional memory alteration highly risky, and frankly, quite interesting from a research perspective. Research perspective, I was a lab rat, so what are my options? For now, your option is recovery, she said, her voice returning to its professional cadence. You are under our care. We need to monitor your recovery, conduct further tests, and assess your integration back into a normal life, should that even be possible. Impossible? I felt a fresh wave of cold dread. What's not possible? We'll discuss the specifics when you're stronger, she said, a clear dismissal in her tone. For now, rest. You'll have a visitor soon. Commander Thorne would like to speak with you. Commander Thorne, same last name, brother, husband. I wondered if the whole initiative was a family business. Before I could ask, she turned and left the room, the door hissing shut behind her with a soft click. The beeping of the monitors seemed unnaturally loud in the ensuing silence. I lay back against the pillows, exhaustion washing over me again. My head still throbbed, and 1,000 questions swirled in my mind. Aegis Initiative, Blackwood Creek Anomaly, ancient entities, future tech. My rational world had been ripped apart, and now I was in a sterile white box under the care of people who knew all about the impossible and saw me as a variable, a unique exposure. Sleep, or something close to it, claimed me again, punctuated by fragmented nightmares of glowing glyphs and hungry eyes. A few hours later, the door hissed open again. This time a man entered. He was tall, powerfully built, with a stern, angular face and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He wore a dark, utilitarian uniform, devoid of rank insignia, but exuding an aura of quiet authority. He moved with a deliberate, confident stride. I instantly recognized him, the leader of the soldiers in the alien chamber, Commander Thorne. Mr. Carter, he said, his voice deep and gravelly, the same voice that had boomed orders in the alien structure. It resonated with the memory of chaotic battle. I'm Commander Elias Thorne. My sister informed me you're awake. Commander, I managed, pushing myself up again. I tried to sound coherent, but my mind was still foggy. Your sister said you wanted to see me. He pulled up a chair and sat beside my bed, his posture relaxed, yet radiating an unspoken tension. He studied me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. Indeed, I want to hear your story, Mr. Carter, from the very beginning, every detail, no matter how insignificant it may seem. I hesitated. How much did they already know? Dr. Thorne said you've been tracking this anomaly for decades. You knew about the bridge. We had intelligence suggesting a persistent localized anomaly within the Blackwood Creek area, he clarified, his voice even. An energy signature fluctuating over time, rumors, local folklore. We had probes in the area, covert surveillance. We knew something was there, but the exact nature, the precise location remained hidden until you stumbled upon it, Mr. Carter. Your vehicle's seismic signature and thermal output, picked up by our drone, led us directly to the bridge just as you crossed it. So you followed me? I asked, a flicker of indignation cutting through my fear. You let me walk into that hellhole. He held my gaze unblinking. Our protocols dictated a non-interventionist approach for initial recon. Had we intervened prematurely, we risked exposing our presence, potentially triggering the anomaly's defensive mechanisms. We observed. Your unique approach, your curiosity, proved to be an invaluable asset in locating the primary entrance and assessing its immediate defenses. A regrettable necessity, I assure you. Regrettable necessity. I had been bait. The thought stung, but deep down I knew he was right. I had gone looking for it, hadn't I, driven by an inexplicable urge. So the whole story, I repeated, a bitter taste in my mouth, from the beginning. He simply nodded, his eyes fixed on me, patiently waiting. And so I began. I told him everything. From the initial tremors, the strange reports from my crew, the bizarre geological patterns, the metallic tang in the air. I recounted my growing obsession, the strange dreams, the feeling of being drawn. I described the journey through the woods, the impossible fog, the sheer wrongness of the bridge, its porous, absorbing quality. The whispers, the shifting mists, the cloying scents. I described stepping onto the cobbled path, the gnarled trees, the growing sense of dread. I spoke of the glowing monolith, the pulsing heart, the etched glyphs, the sudden mental intrusion, the terrifying opening of the maw, the pull, the vision of the multi-eyed entity. I described the violent entry into the chamber, the colossal pillars, the overwhelming silence, the sickening blend of smells. I recounted the terrifying pictographs, the rituals, the feeding of the central entity. My panicked flight, the discovery of the pit, the emerging monster, the silent, robed figures. And finally, the moment the soldier's drill burst through the wall, the ensuing battle, the white flash, and the darkness. I left nothing out, every detail, every terrifying sensation. Commander Thorne listened without interruption, his expression unreadable, occasionally nodding, sometimes making a subtle note on a tablet he produced from his pocket. His stillness was unnerving. When I finished, the room was silent except for the soft beeping of my monitors. I felt utterly drained, reliving the nightmare exhausting me more than the telling. An incredibly detailed account, Mr. Carter, Commander Thorne finally said, his voice flat. Consistent with our intelligence and our own observations. A few discrepancies, but minor. Your recall is exceptional, especially considering the trauma. Discrepancies, I asked, confused. What discrepancies? Your perception of time and certain entities, he explained. For example, the whispers you heard on the bridge. Our analyses indicate it was a localized psychoresonant field generated by the primary entity's dormant consciousness. Not literal voices, but a psychic projection, a form of ancient distress signal. And the multi-eyed entity you glimpsed before entering the chamber and later identified as the source of the hunger, that is what we refer to as the arbiter. It is not a single, corporeal being in the way you understand it, more of a manifested aspect, a conduit for the entity's consciousness and will. The entity itself is far vaster, far more abstract. It permeates the structure. It is the structure in a sense. The arbiter, I repeated, the name giving form to the horror, and the monster from the pits, the insectoid one. The chitinous abomination, he corrected. A biological construct, a guardian, a particularly resilient one. It required a significant expenditure of ordnance to put down. Ordnance, I mumbled, my mind struggling with the clinical detachment. So it's dead. It is currently inert and contained, he said, a subtle shift in his tone. Nothing from that facility is truly dead in the conventional sense, merely dormant or reconfigurable. Its primary function was to protect the arbiter and the central entity. With the central entity's collapse and the arbiter's containment, it is no longer active. Containment, I pressed. You keep saying that. What does that mean for the arbiter? Is it still there? The arbiter is the core consciousness that drives the entire Blackwood Creek anomaly, Commander Thorne explained, leaning forward slightly, his eyes holding mine. It is intertwined with the structure itself. Our assault, coupled with its forced awakening by your presence, led to a critical destabilization. The energy discharge was its desperate attempt to rebuild its connection to its power source, the pit, which is a conduit to an alternate energy dimension, and repair its damaged cognitive functions. We intervened before it could complete that process. The blast you experienced was its self-protective mechanism, an energy pulse designed to incapacitate intruders while it initiated a localized reality fold. We've stabilized the temporal spatial field. The entire complex, including the arbiter, is now in a state of suspended animation within its own pocket dimension, deep beneath the surface. The suspended animation, pocket dimension, my head spun, so you've just buried it. We've isolated it, he clarified, until we can devise a more permanent solution or at least understand its full capabilities. It's a living, thinking entity, Mr. Carter, unlike anything we've ever encountered, and it's incredibly dangerous. Its primary function appears to be that of a conduit or nexus for something far older, far vaster, that lies beyond our understanding. And the robed figures. The veiled sentinels, Commander Thorne supplied, biological synthetic servitors likely created by the arbiter to maintain the facility and perform its bidding. They were programmed to defend, primitive but effective, all eradicated. I processed this, a terrifying tapestry of ancient horrors and desperate human intervention unfolding in my mind. And my unique exposure, I finally asked, remembering Dr. Thorne's words. What did she mean by that? Commander Thorne paused, his gaze becoming more focused. When you were pulled into the chamber, you were exposed to the arbiter's raw, uncontained psychic field. Most individuals would simply have their minds shattered, but something unusual happened. Your mind, though severely traumatized, appears to have formed an unexpected, albeit tenuous, resonance with the entity's own psionic signature. My blood ran cold. Resonance, what does that mean? It means, he continued, his voice low, that you now possess an unusual sensitivity. A connection. We've detected faint, localized psionic fluctuations emanating from you. Nothing aggressive, nothing overt, more like an echo, a lingering imprint, and your brainwave patterns have altered significantly. You're changed, Mr. Carter. Changed how I demanded, a tremor in my voice. Dr. Thorne is still evaluating the specifics, he replied, a hint of something unreadable in his eyes. But preliminary data suggests enhanced sensory perception, heightened intuition, and susceptibility to extra-dimensional phenomena. You effectively have a direct, if weak, link to the energies the Arbiter once commanded. It's an unprecedented development, and it's why you can't simply go home, Mr. Carter. The words hung in the air, cold and stark. You mean I'm stuck here with you people? For your safety and for ours, he said, his voice firm. We cannot risk you unknowingly activating or attracting other anomalies, or worse, becoming a pawn for other factions who seek to exploit such connections. You are now a living beacon, Mr. Carter, a signal in the dark, and there are many things out there that respond to such signals. He stood up, his gaze sweeping over me. Consider it a unique opportunity, Mr. Carter. You have a chance to understand the true nature of the universe, to contribute to humanity's defense against threats it doesn't even comprehend. Your practical skills, your understanding of structure and engineering might prove invaluable in a different capacity. We need people like you, people who have seen beyond the curtain and survived, people who can adapt. Adapt, I repeated, a hollow laugh escaping me. My life, my entire reality had been obliterated. What about my family, my friends, my business? We've created a cover story, he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. A tragic accident during a remote geological survey. Your vehicle was found, staged to appear as if it had plummeted into a deep ravine, unrecoverable. Your affairs are being handled by our legal department. Your family will receive compensation. It's regrettable but necessary. For their safety, they must believe you are gone. My heart clenched. Gone, my practical, grounded self, the man of steel and concrete, was truly gone. This was not a dream. This was my new, horrifying reality. I was isolated, alone, a living anomaly in a secret war I hadn't even known existed. So what is it you want from me? I asked, looking up at him, a desperate resignation settling over me. For now, recover, Commander Thorne replied. Then we will begin your training, your re-education, your integration into Aegis. You have a choice, Mr. Carter. You can become an active participant in our mission, a unique asset, or you can live out your days in comfortable, secure isolation under our protection, but without purpose. Either way, you are with Aegis now. There is no going back. He left as silently as he had arrived, leaving me alone with the stark choice, the phantom ache in my head, and the terrifying, impossible truth of a world far stranger and more dangerous than I had ever imagined. The next few weeks blurred into a monotonous routine of recovery and indoctrination. Dr. Thorne oversaw my physical rehabilitation, monitoring my unique neurological markers with an almost obsessive interest. The head injury healed, the lacerations faded, but the exhaustion, the constant underlying tremor in my hands, and the pervasive sense of unreality lingered. I was given a new identity, a standard Aegis cover, complete with a fabricated past and a blank slate. My old life, my name, my family were sealed away, memories I was encouraged to suppress, to forget. It was like mourning my own death, a painful, drawn-out process that left me feeling hollowed out and adrift. During this time, I also started to experience the enhanced sensory perception Commander Thorne had mentioned. Subtle shifts in air pressure became noticeable. The humming of distant machinery, previously ignored, now registered as a low thrum beneath the everyday sounds. And sometimes, in the dead of night, when the sterile white walls of my room pressed in on me, I would feel it, a faint, persistent pressure in my mind, an echo of the Arbiter, a ghost of the presence that had so nearly shattered my sanity. It was never aggressive, merely a distant hum, a reminder of the connection, a silent whisper from the abyss. My re-education began with extensive debriefings. I spent hours in a stark room, recounting my story again and again to different agents, each one scrutinizing every detail, every nuance, every flicker of emotion. They were meticulous, relentless, trying to extract every scrap of information from my ordeal. I learned about the history of Aegis, its origins in the aftermath of WWII, when seemingly supernatural events demanded a new kind of response. Its growth into a global shadow organization, a clandestine network of scientists, soldiers, and sensitives dedicated to cataloging and containing anomalies. I learned about the veil, the elaborate system of misinformation and denial Aegis maintained to keep the true nature of reality hidden from the general public. It was a complex web of carefully constructed lies, of debunked sightings, censored reports, and cleverly engineered hoaxes designed to discredit genuine encounters. The scale of it was staggering. Then came the formal training, basic self-defense not for combat but for emergency situations, first aid, survival skills, and most importantly, extensive classes on anomalous phenomena. Lectures on different classifications of entities, energy signatures, spatial distortions, temporal anomalies, and psychic manifestations. It was like a crash course in forbidden physics and cosmic horror. I, the man who built bridges, was now learning about interdimensional rifts and the physiology of alien horrors. It was absurd, terrifying, and morbidly fascinating. Dr. Thorne, despite her medical role, was a key figure in my re-education. She often joined the debriefings, her keen mind picking apart my memories, probing for deeper insights into the Arbiter's nature and the subtle changes within me. She was utterly brilliant, her intellect a formidable tool, but her demeanor remained clinically detached, making it difficult to gauge her true feelings. One afternoon, during a break in my training, Dr. Thorne found me in the facility's small, utilitarian recreation room, staring blankly at a muted television screen showing a news report about a mundane political scandal. "How are you settling in, Mr. Carter?" she asked, her voice soft but still carrying that analytical edge. "As well as can be expected, Dr. Thorne," I replied, not bothering to turn, "learning the finer points of reality bending, figuring out how to live without my past, the usual." She took a seat opposite me. "I understand this is difficult. The psychological adjustment to a veil breach is one of the most challenging aspects of our work, but you're proving remarkably resilient." "Is that a medical observation or a compliment?" I asked dryly. "Both," she said, a faint smile touching her lips, a rare sight. "Your mind, despite its conventional roots, possesses a certain plasticity, a capacity to adapt. It's why the Arbiter's initial psychic assault didn't shatter you completely. It found something in you, something resonant. And that resonance is why I'm stuck here, isn't it?" I turned to face her. "Commander Thorne implied I have a choice, but it doesn't feel like one." "It is a choice, Mr. Carter," she insisted. "A difficult one, yes, but Aegis offers purpose. A chance to use this altered state for the greater good. Imagine the alternative, living a lie, constantly fearing exposure, or worse, becoming a target for those who would exploit your connection." "Exploit my connection?" "The Arbiter's dormant consciousness," she explained, "while contained, still sends out faint psionic echoes. These are what we're detecting from you. It's akin to a faint radio signal, but on a psychic frequency. Certain other anomalous entities, and indeed other human factions that are aware of such phenomena, would be very interested in someone who can act as a receiver." Other human factions, my blood ran cold. I had thought Aegis was the only game in town. Dr. Thorne hesitated, her gaze distant. "Aegis is not the only organization aware of the deeper reality, Mr. Carter. There are others. Some are benevolent, others less so. They seek to understand, to control, or even to weaponize these forces. Your unique link makes you a valuable commodity, and a grave danger to yourself if left unprotected. The weight of her words settled heavily upon me. I was not just a survivor, I was a key, a target, a potential weapon. "So what is it you expect me to do?" I asked, looking at her, a strange mix of fear and resignation in my eyes. "Become a psychic detective, a monster hunter?" She leaned forward, her expression serious. "We believe your connection could allow for a deeper understanding of the Arbiter's language, its purpose, perhaps even its weaknesses. Your mind, despite its current state, holds a unique perspective. Your engineering background, your understanding of structures, of how things are built and function, that's a perspective we often lack in our more esoterically inclined sensitives." "You want me to talk to the monster," I stated, the words chilling me. "To the Arbiter." "To study it," she corrected. "To gain insight. From a safe distance, of course. We're developing new containment technologies. Perhaps your unique resonance could even help us build a more permanent solution for the Blackwood Creek anomaly. A way to neutralize it completely, not just suspend it." Her words painted a picture of a grim, unending battle against forces beyond human comprehension, and I, the humble engineer, was now thrust into its heart. "All right," I finally said, the word a reluctant acceptance. Show me everything." A faint smile, genuine this time, touched Dr. Thorne's lips. "Good, we have much to show you, Mr. Carter, much to learn." Weeks turned into months. My rehabilitation progressed. My body, once racked with pain and exhaustion, grew stronger, honed by Aegis's rigorous physical conditioning programs. My mind, too, adapted. The fear, though never entirely gone, receded, replaced by a grim determination and a strange, almost academic curiosity about the impossible world I now inhabited. I started working with Dr. Thorne and her research team in the psychic resonance lab. It was a sterile, highly shielded chamber filled with advanced monitoring equipment, all designed to interface with my unique mental state. They called it Project Echo. My task was to focus, to meditate, to allow my consciousness to brush against the faint echoes of the Arbiter and report on whatever sensations, images, or impressions I received. It was grueling work. The first few sessions were terrifying. The sheer wrongness of the Arbiter's presence, even as a faint echo, was enough to trigger my deepest fears. I would experience blinding headaches, nausea, and fleeting, horrifying visions, impossible geometries, cold, calculating eyes, and ancient, all-consuming hunger. But slowly, with Dr. Thorne's patient guidance and some highly experimental psionic dampeners, I learned to control the influx, to filter the static, to focus on the information. I found that my engineering background actually helped. Instead of seeing abstract terror, I started to perceive the Arbiter's echo as a vast, complex machine. Its thoughts were like intricate schematics, its emotions were like structural stresses. I began to identify patterns, repeating symbols within the psionic noise almost like a language. It was horrifying, but also fascinating. One breakthrough came when I started focusing on the Arbiter's structure, the building itself. Through my connection, I could feel its vastness, its ancient weight. I discovered that the glowing glyphs I had seen on the outside and inside were not just decorative, but functional. They were conduits, energy channels, part of a vast, living circuitry that powered the entire complex. The pit was indeed a power source, drawing energy from a different dimension, a raw, volatile power that the Arbiter was constantly trying to harness and refine. "It's like a gigantic, organic computer," I explained to Dr. Thorne one day, wiping sweat from my brow after an intense session. The glyphs are like its programming language. The pillars are data storage units. The pit is the power core, but it's unstable. It's always trying to draw more, to integrate, to grow. Dr. Thorne's eyes gleamed with intellectual excitement. Remarkable, Mr. Carter. Your insights are invaluable. Our previous sensitives could only perceive raw intent, primal fear. You're giving us a structural blueprint of its consciousness. Commander Thorne also took an interest in my training, observing my sessions, occasionally questioning me about my perceptions. His pragmatic military mind was focused on one thing: how to weaponize this knowledge, how to find a definitive weakness. "If it's a machine, Mr. Carter," he asked me one afternoon, "then it must have a kill switch, a way to shut it down permanently." "A machine can be broken, Commander," I replied, "but it doesn't necessarily have an off switch. And this isn't just any machine. It's alive, it's aware. It feels like its components are also its thoughts, its will." My training also extended beyond Project Echo. Commander Thorne assigned me to a field team, a small unit of Aegis operatives led by a seasoned veteran named Captain Eva Rostova. Eva was a no-nonsense, highly skilled operative with close-cropped dark hair and eyes that had seen too much. Her team consisted of a sharpshooter named Jax, a tech specialist named Chloe, and a heavy weapons expert, a quiet giant named Griff. They were initially wary of me, the civilian asset with the strange abilities, but I proved my worth not with weapons, but with my unique perspective. My first field mission with them was to a newly discovered anomaly in a remote desert region. A geological survey team had reported strange seismic activity and unexplainable energy fluctuations. Aegis suspected another dormant entity. Our objective: recon and containment. As we approached the site, a barren stretch of rock and sand, I immediately felt it. Not the overwhelming presence of the Arbiter, but a different kind of psychic pressure, a low thrumming of dormant power beneath the earth. It was a faint, buzzing sensation, like a hive of unseen insects. "Anything, Carter?" Captain Rostova asked, her voice low over the comms as we surveyed the area from a rocky outcrop. She carried a sleek, modular energy rifle, its scope scanning the desolate landscape. "Something's there," I reported, my brow furrowed. "Underground, deep, it's smaller than the Arbiter, less complex, more like a single, powerful engine, and it's resonating with a form of intense emotional energy, like ancient fear or grief." Chloe, the tech specialist, was already setting up her portable scanners. "My readings are picking up a localized gravitational anomaly and a low-level psionic signature. Your readings are consistent, Carter." "What kind of entity are we dealing with, Carter?" Jax asked, his sniper rifle resting on a tripod, his gaze sweeping the horizon. I closed my eyes, focusing, trying to interpret the psychic echo. "It's cold, ancient, and it has a sense of immense loss, like something that has been mourning for millennia. It's not malicious, not exactly, but it's leaking. Its psychic energy is seeping into the environment, causing instability." Suddenly, the ground beneath us trembled. Not a violent tremor, but a slow, rhythmic undulation like a heartbeat. The air grew heavy, thick with a palpable sense of sorrow. "Readings spiking," Chloe exclaimed, her fingers flying across her holographic interface. "Psionic energy levels going critical, gravitational field collapsing." It's waking up, I whispered, a cold dread creeping into my bones. The grief is turning to rage. From the barren ground below, a faint, translucent shimmering began to rise. It looked like heat haze distorting the air, but it was accompanied by a profound, guttural wail that was not sound, but pure, unfiltered emotion, impacting directly on our minds. It was a cry of unimaginable sorrow, morphing into a scream of cosmic fury. Identify, Captain Rostova barked, her rifle raised, its energy cells glowing faintly. I gasped, clutching my head as the psychic assault intensified. Visions flashed through my mind, a star-spanning civilization, vibrant and brilliant, suddenly extinguished by an unseen cataclysmic force. Billions of voices silenced. A final, desperate plea for help echoing through the void for eons. And a blinding flash of psychic energy that slammed into us with the force of a physical blow. My head snapped back, a scream caught in my throat. The world dissolved into a maelstrom of raw, agonizing emotion. I saw the vibrant star, the swift, merciless extinction, the silent void. It was not just a vision. It was as if I was that entity, experiencing its millennia of profound, unbearable loss. Brace, psychic attack. Captain Rostova's voice was a strained shout over the comms, barely cutting through the mental noise. My body convulsed, my muscles locking up. Jax cried out, dropping his rifle, clutching his temples. Chloe's holographic interface flickered erratically, her face contorted in pain. Griff, the usually stoic heavy weapons specialist, grunted, his massive frame trembling. The translucent shimmering intensified, coalescing into a vaguely humanoid shape, impossibly tall and gaunt, its form wavering like heat above asphalt. It had no discernible features, just an outline, a silhouette of profound agony radiating waves of pure despair. Its wail, now a piercing shriek within our minds, was unbearable. It's not attacking physically, I managed to choke out, my voice hoarse. It's pure psychic output, a feedback loop of grief and despair. How do we stop it, Carter? Eva demanded, her eyes squeezed shut for a moment, then snapping open, resolute. She fired a concentrated burst of energy at the shimmering figure, but the bolts passed through it harmlessly, dissipating into the air. It's not solid, Chloe yelled, having regained some composure. Energy readings are off the charts. It's like a thought made manifest. It's morning, it's past, I gasped, the psychic pressure threatening to crush my skull. It needs silence, solitude. The energy leak is unintentional, a symptom of its suffering. We can't just let it suffer, Jax interjected, his voice ragged. It's ripping our minds apart. We need a psionic dampener, Captain, I shouted, the idea forming in my mind. A way to stabilize its psychic field, to soothe it. Eva's gaze snapped to me. Chloe, can you configure a localized psionic dampener, something to counter this? Chloe, still struggling with the entity's mental assault, nodded frantically. I might be able to reroute the environmental containment field emitters. We can create a localized bubble of quiet, but I'll need some time, and it'll drain the entire power pack. You've got 3 minutes, Chloe, Eva ordered, then turned to Jax and Griff. Suppress its output, distract it, keep it from focusing on Chloe. Distract a thought, Jax muttered, but he picked up his rifle, aiming at the wavering form. Griff hefted his heavy plasma cannon, its internal hum powering up. "It's not about damage, it's about breaking its focus," I yelled, struggling to my feet. My head throbbed, but the connection, the resonance, was also giving me a strange insight. It's sensing our fear, our panic, it's amplifying its own despair. "Then what do we do, Carter?" Eva asked, a hint of desperation in her tone. We need to project calm," I stammered, feeling utterly ridiculous. Or something it can't feed on, a different emotion, something that doesn't resonate with despair. Eva stared at me, then a flicker of understanding crossed her face. "Right, Griff Jacks, give me covering fire. Chloe, status report." Griff's plasma cannon roared, sending concentrated blasts of shimmering energy towards the entity. Jax's sniper rifle chittered, firing precision energy bolts. The blast still passed through the translucent figure, but the raw force of the energy seemed to disrupt its psychic output, causing it to waver and its mental wail to flicker. It was like striking a bell and dampening its resonance. "It's working," I shouted. "The disruption is helping, it's disorienting it." "2 minutes, Captain," Chloe yelled, hunched over her console, her face illuminated by the holographic display. Eva took a deep breath, then, to my surprise, lowered her rifle slightly. "All right, team," she said, her voice calm and steady despite the chaos. "Focus, compartmentalize, think of the mission, think of containment, think of the peace we're trying to achieve." She was projecting calm, not just with her words, but with her very presence, a focused intent that subtly altered the psychic pressure around her. I understood. She was using her own mental discipline, her training, to create a pocket of stability in the storm of emotion. I tried to emulate her, focusing on the sterile white walls of the Aegis facility, on the familiar hum of the Project Echo lab. I concentrated on the concept of containment, of structure, of order. The effect was subtle but noticeable. The overwhelming despair lessened, allowing me to think more clearly. The entity's wail, though still present, felt less impactful, more distant. "1 minute, Captain," Chloe shouted, beads of sweat dripping from her forehead. The entity, sensing the shift, intensified its assault, its wail rising again, visions of cataclysmic destruction flooding my mind, trying to drag me back into the abyss of its grief. I braced myself, digging deep, holding onto the mental image of a sturdy bridge, a strong, unyielding structure. "It's trying to overwhelm us again," Jax gritted out, his shots becoming more frantic. "Almost there," Chloe screamed, her fingers a blur. "Field activating in T-10 seconds." Eva moved, taking a position near Chloe, providing cover, her own mental shield unwavering. "Hold fast, team. Carter, keep focusing on breaking its resonance." I closed my eyes, pouring all my mental energy into my unique connection. Instead of fighting the grief, I tried to understand it, to perceive its structure. It wasn't malice. It was a wound, a gaping, unhealing scar in the fabric of reality. I projected an image of a soothing balm, a containment field not to destroy, but to protect the wound. A high-pitched whine erupted from Chloe's console, quickly followed by a shimmering dome of blue energy that expanded outwards from her position, rapidly encompassing the manifesting entity. The wail was cut short, abruptly silenced. The translucent figure wavered violently, its form flickering, then slowly began to recede, dissolving back into the shimmering heat haze from which it had come. The overwhelming sense of grief and rage receded with it, replaced by a profound, if melancholic, silence. The ground stopped trembling, the heavy air lightened. The desert returned to its desolate, yet mundane self. Chloe collapsed against her console, breathing heavily. Field active, psionic dampening at 98%, its contained captain. Eva lowered her rifle, her shoulders slumping in relief. Good work, team. Griff, secure the perimeter. Jax, set up passive scanners. Carter, report. I opened my eyes, my head throbbing, but my mind clear. It's dormant again, Captain. The dampening field is isolating its psychic output. It's essentially sleeping, in a state of protected grief. Eva nodded, a grim satisfaction on her face. Protected grief. I'll add that to the after-action report. Another successful containment and an excellent demonstration of our newest asset's capabilities. She looked at me, a hint of respect in her eyes. You did good, Carter. That insight about the emotional resonance, it was crucial. I felt a surge of pride, a rare feeling in my new life. It was terrifying, what I could do, what I was becoming. But there was also a strange satisfaction in contributing, in using this terrifying connection for something positive. All right, team, Eva continued, her voice regaining its usual crisp authority. We'll set up a permanent containment field and monitoring station. Aegis will dispatch a research team to study this morning entity. For now, our job is done. As we hiked back to our hidden transport, the desert wind whipping around us, I felt a profound shift within myself. The fear was still there, a constant companion, but it was no longer paralyzing. I had faced down another impossible horror, and I had contributed to its containment. I was no longer just a bewildered civilian. I was an Aegis operative. I was becoming part of this new reality. Returning to the main Aegis facility, deep underground in a classified location, always felt like re-entering a different world after a field mission. The sterile white corridors, the controlled environment, the hum of advanced technology, it was a stark contrast to the untamed, anomalous zones we ventured into. The debriefing for the Desert Anomaly mission was extensive, as always. Commander Thorne listened to our reports with his usual stoic intensity, particularly my own. Your interpretation of the entity as protected grief is intriguing, Mr. Carter, he stated, once the formal reports were concluded. It suggests a potential for non-aggressive containment strategies rather than outright neutralization. This could prove invaluable. It wasn't hostile, Commander, I explained, remembering the profound sorrow. It was just overwhelmed, and we were caught in its emotional fallout. A distinction that many wouldn't make, Mr. Carter, Dr. Thorne interjected, having joined the debriefing. Most sensitives would simply perceive a threat. Your ability to dissect the phenomenon, to understand its underlying mechanics, is a true asset. Later in the Project Echo lab, Dr. Thorne and I continued our work. My connection to the Arbiter, the ancient entity contained beneath Blackwood Creek, was growing stronger. The faint echoes were no longer just indistinct hums. They were becoming more coherent, more like fragmented thoughts, alien logic. I'm starting to see patterns in its calculations, I told her, gesturing at a holographic projection that displayed complex, shifting glyphs I perceived mentally. It's not just a power source. It's also a data processor, a kind of cosmic archive. It's constantly collecting, processing, and storing information. but its mind is fractured, like a library where all the books have been scattered and many are burned. Fractured, Dr. Thorne mused, adjusting her spectacles. That aligns with our theory of a critical core destabilization during our initial breach. It's trying to rebuild its internal architecture to reestablish its functions. Its primary function, I continued, feels like connection. It's trying to connect to something vast, something far beyond even itself. The nexus Commander Thorne referred to, she murmured, its true purpose. What happens if it fully reconnects, Mr. Carter? I shuddered, recalling the overwhelming sense of hunger I'd felt from it during my first encounter. It feels like it wants to expand, to absorb, to become everything. Dr. Thorne nodded, her expression grim. Precisely why our work here is so critical. We must understand it, and if possible, find a way to sever that connection permanently, or at least stabilize it in a way that poses no threat to our reality. My days became a rhythm of training, field missions, and Project Echo sessions. My relationship with my field team solidified. Eva became a mentor, pushing me to refine my abilities, teaching me how to focus under pressure. Jax, the cynical marksman, eventually dropped his initial skepticism, acknowledging my worth. Chloe, the tech specialist, often collaborated with me, translating my psionic insights into quantifiable data, building new tools to enhance my perceptions. Griff, the quiet giant, remained a man of few words, but his loyalty was unwavering, and he always had my back. We undertook several more missions. A subterranean anomaly in a forgotten Mayan temple, where an ancient cult had inadvertently awakened a multi-limbed entity that fed on fear. A temporal distortion in a remote Siberian forest, where an entire village was trapped in a repeating 24-hour loop, caused by a creature that existed simultaneously in multiple timeframes. Each mission was terrifying, dangerous, and a profound lesson in the sheer, bewildering complexity of the universe. I learned to use my connection, my resonance, as a tool. I could sense the presence of anomalies before our instruments. I could often provide insight into their nature, their motivations, if they had any, and their weaknesses. I was no longer just an engineer. I was an anomaly detector, a psychic diagnostician, an interpreter of the impossible. But the most challenging aspect remained Project Echo. The Arbiter's influence, even contained, was a constant presence in my mind. Sometimes, when my guard was down, I would feel a subtle pull, a whisper of its ancient hunger, a fleeting glimpse of its immense, fractured consciousness. It was like living with a distant, terrifying echo in my skull. The Arbiter's core consciousness is attempting to re-establish its cognitive architecture, Dr. Thorne explained to me one day, pointing at a new set of complex algorithms on her monitor. It's generating synodes, concentrated points of psionic energy, as it tries to rebuild its internal logic. Your unique resonance, Mr. Carter, allows us to map these nodes. What are they doing? I asked, looking at the shifting patterns. They're seeking data, she replied. Information. It's trying to learn again, to reintegrate its lost fragments. And it's also searching for a connection. To the Nexus, I finished, feeling a familiar chill. Precisely, she confirmed, and paradoxically, your connection to it is one of the strongest points of data it's perceiving. It's not just a signal for you, you are a signal for it too, a unique, unexpected source of information it's trying to process. The idea that I was not just observing it, but that it was also observing me through our shared connection was unsettling. I was a window for Aegis, but I was also a window for the Arbiter. One evening, after a particularly intense session in the Project Echo lab, I was in my room, trying to unwind. The usual sterile quiet was punctuated by the soft hum of the facility's life support systems. I closed my eyes, trying to clear my mind, but the Arbiter's echoes were stronger than usual. Suddenly, a clear, distinct image flashed in my mind. Not a glyph, not a sensation, but a memory that wasn't mine. It was a vision of vastness, of stars, but not as I knew them. They were like pinpricks of light in an inky blackness, yet somehow profoundly close. And then a colossal, organic-looking structure, spiraling and intricate, moving through that starry void. It was beautiful, terrifying, and utterly alien. Within it, I felt a sense of purpose, of ancient knowledge, of a species that had mastered the very fabric of reality. Then the memory shifted. A cataclysm. Not a bang, but a silent tearing. The void itself seemed to ripple, to unravel. The vast structure was caught in it, twisted, broken, its intricate beauty dissolving into chaos. And then a desperate, frantic act. A fragment of the structure, a core, a central entity being severed, cast out, jettisoned into the chaos, a desperate gamble for survival. The vision ended abruptly, leaving me gasping, my heart pounding. I was drenched in sweat, my hands trembling. I immediately contacted Dr. Thorne. She arrived within minutes, her face etched with concern. "What happened, Mr. Carter?" she asked, her voice urgent as she scanned my vital signs. I recounted the vision, every detail, the vastness, the cataclysm, the desperate jettisoning. Dr. Thorne listened intently, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and intellectual excitement. "An arbiter memory fragment," she whispered, almost to herself. "Unprecedented. This means your resonance has reached a new level. You're not just perceiving its processing, you're accessing its historical data." "What was it?" I asked, my voice still shaky. "That structure, that cataclysm." "We've theorized the Arbiter is not indigenous to Earth," she explained, pacing the room. "Its technology, its very biological structure, defy our understanding of terrestrial evolution. We believe it originated from another galaxy, perhaps even another dimension." "Your vision suggests a catastrophic event, a galactic-scale conflict or environmental collapse that forced its ancestors to jettison a core element, the Arbiter, into the void, a desperate attempt to preserve its lineage or knowledge." "So it's a refugee?" I asked, trying to wrap my mind around the concept. "A survivor," she corrected. "And it crash-landed here or was cast here eons ago. Its current form, the structure, the entity itself, it's all an elaborate, slow-motion attempt to repair itself, to rebuild, to reconnect to its lost purpose or its lost people. The Nexus isn't just a power source, it's a homing beacon, a way to call home or to rebuild a new one." The implications were staggering. The Arbiter wasn't just a monster. It was an ancient, wounded refugee trying to survive, trying to find its way home, and in its struggle, inadvertently threatening our entire reality. But its method of rebuilding and reconnecting involves consuming energy, expanding, and potentially subsuming everything in its path, I pointed out, remembering the hunger. "Yes," Dr. Thorne agreed, her expression becoming serious again. "Its survival mechanism is inherently hostile to our existence. It views our reality as raw material, a power source, a temporary vessel. Its primary directive is self-preservation and reconnection, no matter the cost." This new understanding changed everything. The Arbiter was no longer just a nameless horror. It was a character in a cosmic tragedy, an antagonist with an understandable, if terrifying, motivation. And I, John Carter, the bridge builder, was now privy to its ancient sorrow. Months continued to pass. My work with Project Echo became even more focused. Dr. Thorne and I, now working in a collaborative, almost partnership, honed my ability to access the Arbiter's memory fragments. We started calling them echoes of the void. I saw more glimpses of the Arbiter's original form, a vast sentient network of cosmic consciousness flowing through hyperspace like a living river of light. I saw the beings that had created it, or perhaps were it entities of pure energy living nebulae speaking in harmonies of thought. I saw the event that tore them apart, a ripple in the fabric of space-time, a cataclysmic singularity that unmade stars. The Arbiter, as we knew it, was a desperate shard of that cosmic intelligence, adrift, broken, and instinctually trying to piece itself back together. Its hunger was its desperate attempt to find the energy and matter to reconstruct its lost form, its whispers a garbled cry for help, its glyphs the fragmented language of a forgotten age. My field missions continued as well. Captain Rostova's team became my new family, my anchor in a world turned upside down. We contained a parasitic entity that fed on human joy in a remote village, leaving its victims in a state of catatonic bliss. We shut down an experimental energy generator that had inadvertently opened a microrift to a dimension of pure chaos, risking a localized reality collapse. Each mission further refined my abilities, making me more proficient, more intuitive, but also more aware of the immense, unimaginable forces at play beyond the veil. The world of my old life, the one with blueprints and concrete, seemed impossibly small and naive. One day, Commander Thorne called me into his office. It was a Spartan room, decorated only with a tactical map of the globe, dotted with glowing red and green lights indicating known anomaly locations. "Mr. Carter," he began without preamble, "your work with Project Echo has yielded unprecedented results. We now have a deeper understanding of the Arbiter's nature, its origins, and its ultimate objective. To reconnect with its source or rebuild itself," I confirmed. "To call home." "Precisely," he said, his gaze fixed on me. "And that is why we face a critical juncture. The Arbiter's synods are increasing in frequency and power. It's actively reaching out consciously now, trying to pierce its containment. We believe it's approaching a critical threshold, a point where it could potentially breach its localized reality, fold, and awaken fully." My blood ran cold. "When?" "Within the next few weeks, possibly sooner," he stated, his voice grim. "Dr. Thorne's analysis indicates a rapid acceleration in its reintegration process. The memory fragments you accessed, the information it gained from you through your connection, seems to have given it the missing pieces it needed to expedite its recovery." I felt a pang of guilt. My insights, intended to help Aegis, might have inadvertently accelerated the very threat we were trying to contain. "What's the plan, Commander?" I asked, my voice tight. "Aegis has authorized Operation Skyfall," he revealed, the name chilling me. "A full-scale, definitive solution for the Blackwood Creek anomaly. We intend to sever the Arbiter's connection to its nexus, the pit, permanently, and then we will neutralize the entity itself for good." "Neutralize," I repeated, thinking of the ancient, broken being. "You mean destroy it?" We will eliminate its consciousness, dismantle its physical structure, and collapse the entire pocket dimension upon itself, Commander Thorne affirmed, his voice devoid of emotion. It's the only way to ensure the safety of this planet, Mr. Carter. Its existence in its current state is an existential threat. I thought of the Arbiter's cataclysmic past, its desperate attempt at survival. The thought of its final, absolute destruction felt like a terrible waste. But I also remembered the hunger, the silent, terrifying demand for sacrifice, the inherent hostility of its survival. "What is my role in this?" I asked, knowing the answer already. "Your resonance, Mr. Carter, is our most potent weapon," he explained. "We've developed a specialized psionic resonator. It's designed to amplify your connection to the Arbiter, to open a direct channel to its core consciousness. We need you to act as a precision targeting system, to pinpoint the exact psionic nodes controlling its connection to the pit, and to guide our core charges into them." "You want me to link directly with it?" I felt a knot of dread in my stomach. The Arbiter's full, uncontained presence had nearly shattered me the first time. Linking with it intentionally, amplifying the connection, felt like suicide. "It will be dangerous, Mr. Carter," Commander Thorne admitted. "Extremely so. Your mind will be exposed to its raw power, its full, unadulterated consciousness. But you are the only one with the unique connection and the mental discipline to achieve this. Dr. Thorne has developed a series of psychostimulants and neural inhibitors to help you cope, but there will be no guarantees. And if I fail?" "Then the Arbiter awakens fully, breaches containment, and begins its process of reconnection with our reality as its fuel," he stated, his voice stark. "And given its power, its potential for exponential growth, the consequences would be unimaginable for all of us." The weight of the world, quite literally, settled on my shoulders. I was the key. The humble bridge builder, chosen by cosmic chance, was now humanity's last hope against an ancient, wounded god. "Give me time to prepare," I said, my voice steady, though my hands trembled slightly. "I'll do it." Commander Thorne nodded, a flicker of something akin to approval in his eyes. "You have 3 days, Mr. Carter. Operation Skyfall commences then." The next 3 days were a blur of intensive preparation. Dr. Thorne put me through rigorous mental exercises, pushing my psionic abilities to their absolute limit. I meditated for hours, visualizing the Arbiter's intricate structure, mapping its psi nodes, strengthening my mental defenses against its overwhelming presence. I underwent physical conditioning, preparing my body for the immense strain. My field team, Eva, Jax, Chloe, and Griff, rallied around me. They were not just colleagues, they were my rock. Eva trained me in focused breathing techniques, teaching me how to channel my fear to turn it into a weapon. Jax surprisingly shared stories of harrowing combat, reminding me to stay grounded, to focus on the task. Chloe prepped the psionic resonator, explaining its complex functions, customizing it to my unique neural patterns. Griff simply offered silent support, a comforting, imposing presence. "You're going to be linked to that thing, aren't you, Carter?" Eva asked me one evening as we sat in the sterile mess hall, the air thick with unspoken tension. "As directly as possible," I confirmed, staring at my untouched food. "It's a suicide mission, plain and simple," Jax grumbled, though his tone lacked its usual cynicism. "They're turning you into a living antenna, pointing a bomb at its brain." "We'll be right there with you, Carter," Eva said, her eyes meeting mine, firm and unwavering. "My team, covering your flank, keeping you safe." How can you keep me safe from a psychic entity? I asked, a bitter laugh escaping me. By being there, she replied simply. By making sure no physical threat reaches you. By being a presence you can anchor to if it tries to drag you into its cosmic nightmare. I looked at their faces, weary, determined, ready to face the impossible alongside me. They believed in me. I had to believe in myself. On the third day, the facility was a hive of activity. Aegis operatives, scientists, and security personnel moved with a tense, focused energy. Heavy transport craft were being loaded with specialized equipment. The air crackled with anticipation. Dr. Thorne met me in the Project Echo lab, the psionic resonator already set up. It was a sleek, metallic chair, bristling with electrodes, neural interfaces, and glowing conduits. A complex helmet, woven with fiber optics and microprocessors, rested on a nearby stand. "Ready, Mr. Carter?" she asked, her voice calm, but her eyes betraying her anxiety. "As I'll ever be, Doctor," I replied, taking a deep breath. She guided me to the chair, helping me strap in. Electrodes were placed on my temples, my neck, my wrists. The helmet was gently lowered onto my head, its cool metal pressing against my scalp. A thin, clear gel was applied to ensure maximum conductivity. "This is the neural inhibitor," Dr. Thorne explained, holding up a small vial filled with a shimmering blue liquid. "It will dampen the arbiter's overwhelming influence, allowing you to focus your targeting, but it won't remove the connection entirely. You'll still feel it, Mr. Carter, strongly." She injected the liquid into an intravenous port on my arm. A cold sensation spread through my veins, followed by a strange mental clarity, a heightened awareness that was both invigorating and terrifying. "The psionic resonator will amplify your natural resonance," she continued, her voice now a steady stream of instruction. "It will allow you to project your consciousness, to mentally navigate the arbiter's internal architecture, to identify its most vital psi nodes. When you find them, you will mentally mark them. Our targeting system will lock onto your marks and guide the core charges." "Core charges," I repeated, the phrase carrying a chilling finality. "What exactly are they?" "They are focused reality distortion devices," she explained, her voice dropping slightly, "designed to collapse spacetime at a subatomic level. Essentially, they will unravel the arbiter's core consciousness and its physical structure, containing the collapse within its pocket dimension." I nodded, the enormity of the task settling in. I was to guide weapons that would unravel reality itself. Commander Thorne entered the lab, accompanied by a small team of armored guards. He gave me a curt nod. "Status, Dr. Thorne." "Mr. Carter is prepped and ready, Commander," she reported. "Resonator online, neural inhibitors active." "Excellent," he said, his gaze fixed on me. "Remember your training, Mr. Carter. Focus. The fate of our world rests on your precision." I took another deep breath, the metallic taste of fear in my mouth. "I understand, Commander." The room lights dimmed, and the holographic projections of the Arbiter's internal architecture, gleaned from my previous sessions, flickered to life around me. They were intricate, complex, a swirling tempest of alien logic and fractured memories. Dr. Thorne activated the psionic resonator. A low hum filled the room, growing steadily in intensity. The glowing conduits on the chair and helmet pulsed with energy. Then the connection hit me. It was not a whisper this time, not an echo. It was a roar, a symphony of ancient thoughts, a cosmic choir of fractured purpose. The Arbiter's consciousness, vast and overwhelming, slammed into my mind. Despite the inhibitors, despite the resonator, it was a tsunami of alien information, an ocean of despair and hunger. My body convulsed, my teeth clenching. I gasped, struggling for air, the pressure in my skull immense. My vision blurred, the holographic projections merging with the raw, terrifying images flooding my mind. The vast, shattered cosmic structure, the silent cataclysm, the desperate plea for reconnection. Carter, focus! Dr. Thorne's voice was a distant echo in the storm. Use the inhibitors, filter the static, find the nodes. I grit my teeth, fighting against the overwhelming influx. I reached for the mental image of my bridge, my sturdy, unyielding structure. I forced my engineer's mind to perceive the chaos not as terror, but as a system. A broken, dying system, but a system nonetheless. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to filter the noise. The vastness of the Arbiter's consciousness was still terrifying, but within it, I started to discern patterns. The synods, like glowing hubs of alien thought, pulsated within its intricate mental architecture. They were vital, crucial points, each one a key to its connection to the pit, to its reawakening. I see them, I whispered, my voice strained. There are seven primary nodes controlling the Nexus connection. Affirmative, Carter, Commander Thorne's voice, amplified through the comms in my helmet, was sharp and clear. Confirm targeting lock as you identify each one. We will deploy the core charges in sequence. I took a shaky breath, preparing myself. This was it, the final act. I reached out with my amplified consciousness, focusing all my will, all my training towards the first node. It was a nexus of pure energy, a vortex of fragmented memories and desperate hunger. As my consciousness brushed against it, a wave of raw power surged through me, threatening to overwhelm my inhibitors. I felt a profound sense of violation from the Arbiter, a deep, ancient rage at my intrusion. Targeting lock confirmed on Node 1, I gasped, forcing the words out. A core charge 1 deployed, Commander Thorne's voice boomed. Impact in T-10 seconds. A new wave of psychic agony erupted from the Arbiter as the first core charge impacted. It wasn't a sound, but a tearing, a rending of its very being. I felt it deeply, agonizingly. It was like tearing a piece of my own soul. Node 2, I shouted, pushing through the pain, forcing my concentration onto the next target. Lock confirmed. Core charge 2 deployed. Impact in T-10 seconds. Again, the ripping agony. Again, the profound, ancient scream that resonated only in my mind. My body was shaking uncontrollably, sweat pouring down my face. Carter, maintain focus, Dr. Thorne urged, her voice laced with concern. I closed my eyes, picturing Eva, Jax, Chloe, Griff, my team, the people who believed in me. I pictured the entire world, oblivious, safe behind the veil. I pictured my old life, the bridges I built, the stability I craved. This was for them. Node 3, Node 4, each one a battle, each one a tearing of cosmic flesh, each one a scream of profound alien pain. By Node 5, my nose was bleeding, a thin stream running down my face. My vision was blurring, the room swimming around me. The Arbiter's mind was fighting back, actively trying to overwhelm me, to shatter my will, to drag me into its infinite despair. Node 5 confirmed, I gasped, barely able to speak. The pain was unbearable, but I pushed through it, a stubborn engineer refusing to let a system fail. Just two more, Carter. Commander Thorne's voice was urgent now. You're almost there. Node 6 was a swirling vortex of anger and fear. As I locked onto it, the Arbiter projected a raw, terrifying image directly into my mind. The entire planet Earth, consumed, absorbed, its vibrant surface dissolving into a swirling maelstrom of raw energy, fueling its monstrous form. A vision of absolute destruction. No, I screamed, fighting back against the horrifying vision, struggling to maintain my focus. Node 6 locked. Core charge 6 deployed. One more, Carter, one more. The final node, Node 7, pulsed with a desperate, all-consuming urge for survival. It was the Arbiter's very will, its last, primal command. It projected an image of myself, broken, mind shattered, absorbed into its vast, incomprehensible consciousness, becoming merely another fragment in its eternal, hungry expanse. No, I roared, a primal scream ripped from my very core, echoing not just in my mind, but seemingly within the lab itself. My entire being recoiled from the vision, from the terrifying promise of oblivion. The neural inhibitors strained, barely holding back the tide. I gripped the arms of the chair, my knuckles white, my body convulsing. This was more than just a threat. It was a psychological weapon, aimed directly at my deepest fear of losing myself, of being absorbed. Carter, fight it! Eva's voice, distorted but clear, cut through the mental storm, a strong, steady anchor. You're stronger than this. Focus on the node. Her words, coupled with the desperate, unwavering belief in her tone, sparked a defiant ember within me. I was John Carter. I built bridges. I created order from chaos. I would not be undone. I would not become another nameless part of it. I forced my eyes open, though they were stinging with sweat and blood. The holographic projections of the Arbiter's mind swirled before me, but now, the final, desperate node, Node 7, pulsed with a blinding intensity. It was the heart of its will, the focal point of its desperate longing. I channeled every ounce of my remaining strength, every shred of my resolve into that amplified connection. I didn't just target it, I pushed into it. I forced my consciousness, an act of sheer mental violence, past its last frantic defenses. I saw the ancient wound, the cosmic loneliness, the desperate, unyielding drive for survival. And in that moment, I understood it not just as a machine, but as a terrified, dying god clinging to existence. Node 7 locked, I screamed, the words tearing from my throat, my voice raw and broken. Core Charge 7 deployed. Commander Thorne's voice was triumphant, relieved. Impact in T-minus 10 seconds. Prepare for final severance, Dr. Thorne. The countdown began, each number a hammer blow to my already shattered mind. 10, 9, 8. The Arbiter's final, unadulterated cry of agony and despair exploded within my skull, a soundless scream that threatened to rip the very fabric of my sanity. It was not just pain, it was the sorrow of a lost civilization, the terror of ultimate annihilation, the raw grief of a being witnessing its own demise, replayed through my amplified connection. 7, 6, 5. I felt a surge of energy, violent and raw, not from the core charge, but from the Arbiter itself. A last, desperate convulsion. Its consciousness in its final moments was trying to reach out to latch onto anything to anyone, and I was the closest, the most connected. 4, 3, 2. A searing pain shot through my head, hotter than any fire, colder than any ice. I felt a profound pull, a mental vortex threatening to drag my consciousness, my very essence, into the void opening within the arbiter as the core charges did their work. "It's trying to take him," Dr. Thorne yelled, her voice panicked, breaking her clinical composure for the first time. "It's a last-ditch psychic siphon. Sever the connection now." "Negative," Commander Thorne's voice was grim, resolute. "The charges need his full, focused link for proper implosion. Severing now risks an uncontrolled breach." 1. The world exploded into white. My consciousness stretched, thin as a thread, pulled taut between my dying body in the chair and the imploding mind of the arbiter. I saw it, felt it, was it, as its vast internal architecture began to unravel, its synodes tearing apart, its connection to the pit shattering. The cosmic archive collapsed, the ancient memories fragmented into dust. The hunger, the despair, the purpose, all extinguished in a silent cosmic scream. Then nothing. Absolute, profound, terrifying nothingness. I was falling, or perhaps floating. There was no up, no down, no light, no sound, just an infinite, empty void. My body was gone. My senses were gone. Only a sliver of my consciousness, a desperate, terrified spark remained. Had I been absorbed? Had I been destroyed? Was this the arbiter's afterlife or my own? A distant, faint hum, familiar, the hum of the Aegis facility, the hum of the life support, the hum of reality. It grew slowly, painstakingly, pulling me back from the precipice. I felt a faint pressure, then a dull ache, my head, my body. I gasped, a ragged, choking sound and light, blinding and painful, assaulted my eyes. "He's coming back online. His vitals are stabilizing." Dr. Thorne's voice, strained but relieved, was the first thing I heard. My eyes fluttered open. I was still strapped into the chair. The helmet was off, lying on the floor beside me. Dr. Thorne was leaning over me, her face pale, a small, genuine smile gracing her lips. Commander Thorne stood further back, his expression tight, but his shoulders seemed to have relaxed. Eva, Jax, Chloe, and Griff were there, their faces a mixture of concern and immense relief. "Carter, can you hear me?" Dr. Thorne asked, her hand pressing gently against my forehead. I tried to speak, but my throat was raw, and only a weak groan escaped me. My entire body felt like it had been run over by a cosmic truck. "The arbiter," I rasped, forcing the words out. "Is it gone?" Dr. Thorne nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "It's gone, Mr. Carter. The core charges imploded its physical and psychic structure. The entire pocket dimension collapsed in on itself. The anomaly at Blackwood Creek has been neutralized permanently." A wave of profound exhaustion washed over me, but with it, an incredible sense of relief. It was over. The nightmare, the ancient, hungry presence, was gone. "You did it, Carter," Commander Thorne said, his voice unusually soft, almost reverent. "You saved us all." I closed my eyes, a single tear tracing a path through the grime and dried blood on my cheek. I was alive, and the world was safe. The aftermath of Operation Skyfall was a whirlwind of activity, debriefings, and physical and psychological recovery. I spent weeks in the Aegis medical wing, my body slowly mending from the immense psychic strain. Dr. Thorne monitored my neurological markers with even greater intensity. documenting the profound changes my mind had undergone. "Your brain activity is unprecedented, Mr. Carter," she explained one afternoon, reviewing a holographic scan of my neural network. "The direct, amplified link with the Arbiter and your survival of its destruction has had a profound impact. Your psionic abilities have not just returned to pre-Skyfall levels, they have significantly amplified and stabilized." "What does that mean?" I asked, feeling a strange mixture of apprehension and wonder. "It means," she began, a thoughtful expression on her face, "that your resonance is no longer just a faint echo or a passive receiver. You are now a fully realized psionic conduit. You can still sense anomalies, perhaps even more acutely than before, but you also possess the potential for active psionic projection, manipulation, and even limited psychic shielding." The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. More power, more connection, more potential to see the impossible and perhaps to control it. My recovery wasn't just physical. The memories of the Arbiter's final moments, its cosmic scream, its profound despair lingered. I had witnessed the death of a god, a being of ancient sorrow and immense power. It had been terrifying, but also, in a strange way, profoundly sad. It reminded me that even the most monstrous threats could have tragic origins. But with the terror came a sense of profound purpose. I had faced the ultimate threat, and I had emerged. I was no longer just an engineer, I was a protector. My field team, my family, were a constant presence during my recovery. Eva visited daily, bringing me updates on Aegis operations, sharing her quiet strength. Jax, surprisingly, often sat in silence, just offering his presence. Chloe brought me snacks and shared her tech insights, eager to collaborate on new ways to harness my expanded abilities. Griff simply nodded, a silent guardian. When I was finally cleared for light duty, my first stop was the field team's ready room. Eva was cleaning her rifle, Jax was sharpening a combat knife, Chloe was hunched over a laptop, and Griff was doing pull-ups on a reinforced beam. "Look what the cat dragged in," Jax grunted, a rare, genuine smile on his face. "Good to see you on your feet, Carter," Eva said, putting down her rifle, feeling up to some proper work. I grinned, a feeling of genuine warmth spreading through me. "More than ready, Captain." And so, my new life as an Aegis operative began in earnest. My expanded psionic abilities made me an even more invaluable asset. I could detect even the faintest anomalous signatures, discern their nature with uncanny accuracy, and even, on occasion, subtly influence them. My role in Project Echo evolved. With the Arbiter gone, Dr. Thorne focused on understanding my unique neural architecture, hoping to replicate my resonance to create new psionic sensitives. We spent hours in the lab exploring the new frontiers of my mind, pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible. My field missions became more frequent, more dangerous, but also, in a strange way, more fulfilling. We traveled the globe, containing new threats, investigating ancient mysteries, and safeguarding humanity from the horrors beyond the veil. One such mission took us to a remote research station in the Arctic, a desolate outpost pounded by unforgiving winds. A rogue scientific team, obsessed with reverse engineering anomalous technology, had inadvertently tapped into a localized tier in reality, unleashing a cascade of interdimensional entities. As our specialized Aegis transport landed amidst the swirling snow, I immediately felt it. Not just the cold, but a chilling sense of wrongness in the air. a spatial distortion that made my teeth ache. Gravitational anomalies off the charts, Chloe reported, huddled over her wrist-mounted console, the bitter wind whipping her hair. Reality folds are localized, but they're expanding rapidly, and I'm picking up multiple energy signatures, non-terrestrial. Carter, your read, Eva asked, her face grim beneath the hood of her Arctic gear. I closed my eyes, focusing. My enhanced psionic senses reached out, piercing the veil of snow and distortion. It's a bleed-through, Captain. Multiple dimensions are intersecting here, and the entities, they're not just physical. They're ethereal, phasing in and out of our reality. They feed on temporal energy, our time. A piercing shriek rent the air, not from any physical source, but directly in our minds. A translucent, multi-limbed creature, shimmering with an impossible, fractured light, phased into existence directly in front of us. Its form seemed to ripple, as if it existed in different moments simultaneously. The temporal entity, Jax yelled, bringing his energy rifle to bear. Looks like it's trying to age us to death. He was right. A wave of localized temporal acceleration washed over us. My muscles ached, my skin felt taut, as if decades were passing in seconds. Hold your ground, Eva ordered, her voice strained. She fired a burst of energy at the creature, but like the morning entity, it phased through harmlessly. They're untouchable in their ethereal state, Chloe shouted, trying a new frequency on her tech. We need to stabilize their reality anchor. I can try to force its temporal anchor, I said, a dangerous idea forming in my mind. If I can push it fully into our time, even for a moment, you can hit it. Risky, Carter, Eva warned. That's direct psionic manipulation. You could get caught in its temporal field. It's our best shot, Captain, I replied, already pushing my mind outwards, focusing on the shimmering creature. I concentrated on the concept of solidity, of fixity in time, trying to mentally anchor the creature to our present. The entity shrieked again, sensing my intrusion, its form flickering violently. I felt its resistance, a strange, temporal feedback that twisted my perception of time. For a moment, I saw flashes of my past, my childhood, my old life, compressed into milliseconds, then ripped away. Now, Jax, Griff, I yelled, pouring all my mental force into the task. The creature solidified, its form becoming clearer, more distinct for a fleeting instant. Jax, ever the opportunist, fired a precise energy bolt. It slammed into the creature's chest, actually hitting it this time. Griff followed up with a burst from his plasma cannon, and the entity, still shrieking, exploded into a shower of iridescent particles that dissipated harmlessly into the snow. Good work, Carter, Eva shouted, a relieved look on her face. But there are more, Chloe, status on the reality tier. It's widening, Chloe replied, her fingers flying across her console. We're not just dealing with temporal entities. Gravitational distortions are increasing. Something bigger is coming through. Suddenly, the ground beneath us trembled violently. A jagged crack appeared in the frozen earth, expanding rapidly. From within the rift, a low, guttural roar echoed, a sound that vibrated not just in the air, but in my very bones. That's not an entity, I whispered, my eyes wide with alarm. That's a dimension, a raw, uncontrolled dimension of pure gravity and crushing pressure. A colossal amorphous blob of darkness, vaguely reminiscent of a swirling black hole, began to ooze out of the rift, distorting the very light around it. It devoured everything it touched, rocks, ice, even the air itself, leaving behind only absolute nothingness. Gravitational entity, Eva barked, her voice tense. This thing will crush us all. Energy weapons are useless, Jax exclaimed, firing a test shot that was immediately absorbed into the swirling mass. I can feel its core, I said, my teeth clenched against the immense pressure. It's not truly alive in the way we understand. It's an anomaly of pure physical law, a self-sustaining pocket of extreme gravity. It's trying to equalize pressure to expand and collapse our reality into its own. How do we stop something that's literally made of gravity? Chloe yelled, her voice bordering on despair. We can't destroy it, I realized, an idea sparking in my mind, drawing on my understanding of the Arbiter's structure. But maybe we can contain it. If we can create an opposing gravitational field, a counter-pressure to push it back into its own dimension and then seal the rift. Opposing gravitational field, Eva asked, incredulous. Chloe, can you do that? Chloe stared at her console, her brow furrowed in intense concentration. Maybe, if I can reroute the transport's anti-grav drives and amplify them through a focused energy projector, but it's risky. It could overload the whole system and tear itself apart. We're running out of time, Griff shouted as the gravitational entity expanded further, now a looming, terrifying presence. The ground beneath us groaned, the air grew thick and heavy, pressing down on us. Carter, can you give Chloe a target, a focal point for the counterfield? Eva asked, her gaze fixed on me. I closed my eyes, pushing my psionic senses into the heart of the anomaly. I could feel the immense, crushing pressure, the singular point of origin for its gravitational field. Yes, there's a core, a singularity point within its mass. It's like an eye. If you can project the field directly into that, it could push it back. Got it, Chloe yelled, already tapping away at her console, a frantic flurry of holographic projections appearing around her. I'll need cover. The transport's power core will be exposed. Griff, Jax, protect Chloe. Eva, I'll try to disrupt its gravitational pull. Buy her time, I shouted, already pouring my mental energy into the task. I focused on the idea of dispersion, of lightness, trying to subtly counteract the entity's overwhelming pull. It was like pushing against an invisible, infinitely heavy wall. My head throbbed, my nose started to bleed again, but I held my ground, creating a small, almost imperceptible zone of slightly less intense gravity around our team, just enough to give us a precious few seconds. Chloe worked frantically, wiring, rerouting, her face a mask of intense concentration. Jax and Griff opened fire on the amorphous blob, their energy bolts harmlessly swallowed, but their concentrated fire drawing the entity's sluggish attention, buying Chloe critical moments. Almost there, Chloe screamed, her fingers flying. System cycling, energy projector charging. The gravitational entity, sensing our resistance, pulsed, and the pressure increased exponentially. My knees buckled, threatening to collapse under the immense weight. I fought back, gritting my teeth, my vision blurring. Now Chloe, Eva yelled, her own body struggling against the pressure. A high-pitched whine erupted from Chloe's modified energy projector, growing to an unbearable shriek. A focused beam of shimmering blue energy erupted from the device, slamming directly into the singularity point I had identified within the gravitational entity. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the black mass wavered. The pressure lessened almost imperceptibly at first, then rapidly. The entity began to recede slowly, sluggishly, back into the jagged rift in the earth. "It's working," I gasped, relief flooding through me. "Keep the pressure on." Chloe maintained the beam, straining, her face crimson with effort. The gravitational entity shrank, pulled back into its own dimension by the opposing force. The crack in the earth began to seal itself, the jagged edges grinding together, the dimensional tier closing. With a final, profound shudder, the rift closed, leaving only scarred, frozen earth. The pressure vanished. The air returned to normal. The chilling sense of wrongness dissipated. Chloe collapsed, panting, the energy projector smoldering and smoking. Rift-sealed power core barely survived. Eva rushed to her side, checking her vitals. "You did it, Chloe, all of you," another one contained. I slumped to the ground, utterly spent but alive. My body ached, my head pounded, but the feeling of accomplishment, of having averted another cosmic disaster, was immensely satisfying. My new life was perilous, exhausting, and utterly devoid of the simple certainties of my past. But it was also filled with purpose, with the camaraderie of a team that faced the impossible together, and with the profound, terrifying wonder of a universe far grander and stranger than I had ever imagined. I was no longer just John Carter, the engineer. I was an Aegis operative, and I was exactly where I needed to be. The success of the Arctic mission and my increasingly sophisticated psionic abilities earned me a new level of respect within Aegis. Commander Thorne, in a rare display of personal recognition, lauded my efforts in a facility-wide briefing. Dr. Thorne, meanwhile, began pushing my training further than ever before. "Your capacity for psionic projection is growing, Mr. Carter," she explained during a session in the Project Echo lab. "We believe you are developing a latent ability to not just sense, but to interface with non-psionic anomalous phenomena, to understand their fundamental laws, their programming, as you so often put it, and potentially to subtly influence them." This meant I was becoming more than just a detector. I was evolving into a direct participant, a living bridge between realities. My days became a rigorous schedule of advanced psionic exercises, mental combat simulations, and collaborative research with Dr. Thorne to map the intricacies of anomalous phenomena. My field team continued to be my rock. We were deployed to a range of increasingly complex and dangerous situations. A sentient fog bank in rural Ireland that absorbed memories. A pocket dimension disguised as a carnival in the American Midwest where time flowed backward. A cavern in India where ancient Sanskrit texts were inadvertently summoning thought forms from the collective unconscious. Each mission honed our skills, strengthened our bonds, and deepened my understanding of the vast, terrifying tapestry of the universe. I found a new rhythm in this impossible life. The sterile confines of the Aegis facility were my home. My team was my family. The constant threat of cosmic horror was my everyday. And the lingering shadow of the Arbiter, though gone, was a constant reminder of the stakes. One afternoon, during a lull between missions, Commander Thorne summoned me to his office once more. He sat behind his imposing desk, the tactical map of the globe glowing softly behind him. "Mr. Carter," he began, his voice serious, "your performance in the field and in Project Echo has exceeded all expectations. Your unique abilities have proven invaluable in our ongoing efforts to contain and neutralize anomalous threats." "Thank you, Commander," I replied, a sense of unease settling over me. Compliments from Thorn usually preceded a monumental task. "Which brings me to a new development," he continued, leaning forward. "We have recently detected a significant increase in anomalous activity in a cluster of areas globally. Specifically, energy signatures consistent with highly advanced non-terrestrial technology. We believe these are not just random anomalies." He paused, his gaze fixed on me. "We believe this is a coordinated effort, a deliberate probe." My blood ran cold. A probe from whom? "That is what we need to determine," Thorne stated, his voice grim. "But our intelligence suggests this is linked to the factions Dr. Thorne mentioned to you previously. The other organizations aware of the Veil, some benevolent, some less so. But now we are seeing signs of a third party, an unknown entity, one that appears to be actively seeking out existing anomalies, attempting to activate them or perhaps even control them." "Are you saying someone is trying to weaponize the anomalies?" I asked, the thought horrifying. "Or perhaps harvest them," he corrected, his expression unreadable. "What we do know is that they are demonstrating capabilities far beyond anything we've encountered from known terrestrial groups, and their methods are surgical, precisely targeting, subtly influencing." He gestured to the tactical map. A new cluster of red lights, brighter than the others, flickered ominously. "This concentration of activity is unlike anything we've seen. It suggests a focused, intelligent will behind it, and it's getting closer, much closer to home." "What's the plan, Commander?" "Aegis is initiating Project Nexus," he revealed, the name echoing my old fears about the Arbiter's original purpose. "Its primary objective is to identify and intercept this unknown faction, to understand their objectives, and if necessary, to neutralize them before they can fully harness or exploit the anomalous forces that threaten our world." "And my role?" "Your unique psionic resonance, your ability to interface with anomalous energies will be crucial," Thorne explained. "We believe this unknown faction might be using similar psionic or energy-based technologies to activate and control these anomalies. You are our best chance at discerning their methods, their signatures, and ultimately their intentions." He rose from his desk, walking over to the map. His finger pointed to a new, brightly glowing red dot, pulsing with an unsettling intensity. "Our latest intel suggests a highly potent anomalous energy signature developing in a densely populated urban area. Midtown, New York City." My heart clenched. New York, the city of my old life. The city of skyscrapers and bridges, the city where I had built dreams unaware of the lurking horrors. "This is not a containment mission, Mr. Carter," Commander Thorne stated, his voice hardening. "This is an offensive. We are sending our best. You and Captain Rostova's team will be at the forefront of this operation. Your objective: infiltration, reconnaissance, and if necessary, direct engagement with this unknown faction." The weight of the mission settled on my shoulders, heavier than any previous one. This wasn't just about containing a monster. It was about confronting a shadowy adversary, an unknown intelligence that threatened to upset the delicate balance Aegis had fought so long to maintain. "We leave in 24 hours, Thorne concluded, his gaze unwavering. "Prepare yourself, Mr. Carter. This is where your true purpose begins." The journey to New York City was undertaken in a specialized Aegis stealth transport, cloaked and shielded to evade all known detection methods. The city, sprawling beneath us, was a shimmering tapestry of lights, a stark contrast to the desolate landscapes of our usual missions. It felt surreal, being back among millions of unsuspecting lives, knowing the secrets I now carried. My team was with me. Eva, stoic and focused, reviewed mission parameters. Jax meticulously checked his customized energy rifle. Chloe, her fingers flying across her holographic interface, cross-referenced real-time city data with known anomalous hotspots. Griff, a silent mountain of muscle, simply observed the city lights, a rare contemplative look on his face. Intel suggests the primary anomalous signature is emanating from an old, disused subway station beneath Times Square, Eva explained, pointing to a flickering dot on her map. The area has been quiet for decades, officially condemned, but our deep scan satellites detected a massive energy spike last night. "Times Square," I muttered, a pang of nostalgia hitting me. I remembered taking my family there, the cacophony of lights and sounds. Now a hidden horror brewed beneath its surface. "Our preliminary analysis suggests it's a dimensional anchor," Chloe added, her voice serious. "Something is trying to stabilize a tier between realities, possibly to bring through something big." "In this unknown faction?" I asked. "Likely operating within the abandoned station," Eva replied. "They've somehow managed to mask their presence from all but our most sensitive, long-range scans. We'll be going in blind once we're on the ground." The transport descended into a discreet, Aegis-secured underground hangar beneath a nondescript building on the outskirts of Manhattan. We disembarked, changing into civilian clothes over our lightweight, armored Aegis undersuits. Our weapons were modular, designed to look like mundane tools or electronics until deployed. My psionic resonator was integrated into a wrist-mounted device, sleek and unassuming. Walking through the bustling streets of New York, surrounded by oblivious crowds, felt like moving through a dream. The sheer normality of it all was jarring after months in the hidden world of Aegis. The smell of street food, the blare of taxi horns, the chatter of 1,000 conversations, it was a sensory overload, a stark reminder of the life I had lost. "Stay focused, Carter," Eva's voice whispered in my ear through our comms, sensing my distraction. "Maintain cover, we're shadows in the crowd." We made our way to the general area of Times Square, blending seamlessly into the throngs of tourists and commuters. The vibrant billboards, the flashing lights, the sheer energy of the place felt like a protective shell over the dark secret lurking beneath. As we neared the entrance to the abandoned subway station, a subtle shift occurred. The background hum of the city began to distort for me, a faint, almost subliminal thrum of anomalous energy filtering through the everyday noise. My psionic senses tingled, a familiar warning. "I'm feeling it," I whispered into my comms. "The signature is stronger here, and it's not just the dimensional anchor. There's another presence, something cold, calculating like a machine, but with intelligence." "Confirming localized energy fluctuations," Chloe reported. "Standard instruments are picking up static, but your readings align with the deep scans." We located a disguised entrance to the old subway system, a maintenance tunnel long forgotten by the city. Jax expertly bypassed the ancient locks and we slipped into the darkness. The air in the tunnel was heavy with the smell of damp earth, rust, and something else, a faint metallic scent like ozone mixed with something utterly alien. The silence was absolute, broken only by the drip of water and our own careful footsteps. This place is deeper than standard subway lines, Eva observed, her flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. Looks like it was part of an earlier, forgotten infrastructure project. My psionic senses were overwhelmed as we ventured deeper. The air thrummed with a low, resonant frequency vibrating within my very bones. The dimensional anchor was immense, a vast, unseen engine pulsating with raw, unquantifiable energy. And that other presence, the cold, calculating intelligence, was undeniably here. "I'm seeing faint energy readings on my handheld," Chloe whispered, her eyes glued to her device. "And there are traces of an unknown material, not from Earth, not from any known dimension Aegis has catalogued." We navigated winding tunnels, past derelict tracks and crumbling platforms until we reached a vast subterranean cavern. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. The natural rock walls had been smoothed, carved with impossible precision, and lined with a strange, dark, obsidian-like material that seemed to absorb the light. In the center of the cavern, a massive, swirling vortex of iridescent energy pulsed, slowly expanding. It was the dimensional anchor, a gaping maw opening into another reality. And around it, arranged in a precise, almost ritualistic pattern, were structures of the same alien obsidian. They hummed with controlled power, feeding the growing vortex. "That's it," I whispered, my voice filled with awe and dread. "The anchor and the structures are enhancing its output. They're like psionic amplifiers." But it was not the vortex that truly caught my attention. It was the figures moving among the structures. They were human, or seemed human, clad in sleek, dark suits of an unfamiliar design. Their faces were obscured by reflective visors, giving them an unsettling, uniform appearance. They moved with a detached, almost robotic efficiency. "The unknown faction," Eva stated, her voice tight as she activated her rifle's scope. "They're here." "I'm detecting no organic signatures from them, Captain," Chloe whispered, her tech scanning the figures. "Their suits are absorbing all emissions, but their movements are too precise, like automata." "They're not just wearing suits, Chloe," I interjected, my psionic senses probing the figures. "The suits are them, or at least they're inextricably linked. I'm feeling a faint, unified consciousness, a hive mind, and it's cold, utterly without emotion." As I spoke, one of the figures, seemingly sensing our presence, turned its head. Its visor glowed with a faint, crimson light sweeping across our hidden position. "They've made us," Jax muttered, unholstering his rifle. "Engage," Eva barked, her energy rifle snapping to her shoulder. "Neutralize the operatives. Priority 1, secure the anchor. Do not let that thing fully open." Chaos erupted. Eva, Jax, and Griff opened fire, their energy bolts tearing through the darkness. The obsidian-suited figures reacted with surprising speed and precision, drawing sleek, energy weapons from their belts. Their bolts were silent, crimson lines of light that seared through the air. We moved, engaging the enemy. Their movements were fluid, inhumanly efficient. They didn't speak, didn't cry out. They were relentless. Their shields are strong, Jax yelled, his shots deflecting off the obsidian suits with sparks. I need to get closer to those amplifier structures, I shouted over the din. If I can disrupt their energy flow, it might slow the anchor. Go, Carter, we'll cover you, Eva ordered, unleashing a volley of fire that pinned down 2 of the enemy operatives. I broke cover, sprinting across the cavern floor, dodging crimson energy bolts that sizzled past my head. My psionic resonator hummed on my wrist, eager for its task. As I reached the first obsidian structure, I slammed my hand against its smooth, cold surface. I pushed my consciousness into it, trying to unravel its alien design to disrupt its energy flow. It was complex, interwoven with intricate psionic circuits, far beyond anything I had encountered before. It felt like trying to unpick the code of a living machine. But I pressed on, focusing on the principles of dissipation, of entropy, trying to force its ordered energy into chaotic disarray. The structure shuddered, its low hum faltered, and a ripple of distortion passed through the air. The swirling vortex of the dimensional anchor seemed to stutter, its expansion slowing, if only for a moment. It's working, Chloe yelled, her tech now focused on the anchor. The expansion has slowed by 3%. Keep it up, Carter. Suddenly, a blinding crimson bolt slammed into the wall next to me, showering me with debris. I spun around, seeing one of the obsidian-suited figures advancing, its visor glowing menacingly. Its weapon was unlike the others, larger, more powerful. Carter, look out, Jax shouted, but he was pinned down by 2 other operatives. The figure fired again, a concentrated beam of raw energy. I reacted instinctively, pushing my psionic energy outwards, creating a faint, shimmering shield in front of me. It was a new ability born of my amplified resonance. The crimson beam impacted my shield, pushing me back, making my teeth ache. The energy shimmered, straining against the raw force. It held for a moment, then began to crack. My shield won't hold, I yelled, struggling against the immense pressure. Griff, cover Carter, Eva ordered. Griff, seeing my peril, let out a guttural roar. He hefted his massive plasma cannon, abandoning his previous target, and unleashed a torrent of superheated plasma at the obsidian-suited operative. The powerful plasma bolts tore into the figure, its obsidian shield flaring brightly, crackling under the assault. The operative was momentarily stunned, its energy beam faltering. Thanks, Griff, I yelled, dropping my psionic shield, which dissolved with a painful shiver through my arm. My head throbbed, a warning sign of overexertion. I turned back to the amplifier structure, pouring every ounce of focus into disrupting its intricate circuits. With Griff providing covering fire, I pushed deeper into the structure's alien consciousness. It felt like wrestling with a glacier of pure logic, cold and unyielding. I visualized the energy flowing within it as a river and myself as a dam, attempting to redirect its force to break its current. Finally, with a guttural grunt of effort, I felt a crucial circuit give way. The hum of the obsidian structure sputtered, its glow dimming significantly. The dimensional anchor in the center of the cavern wavered, its iridescent vortex contracting slightly. Two down, I shouted, feeling a surge of defiant energy despite the growing exhaustion. Anchor receding by 5%, Chloe. Affirmative, Carter, but we've got more coming. Chloe's voice was strained. New signatures, heavier units. Indeed, from the shadows at the far end of the cavern, more obsidian-suited figures emerged. These were larger, their frames broader, and their weapons emitted a more sinister, pulsing red light. They moved with a disturbing, almost predatory grace. These aren't just operatives, Carter, Eva warned, her voice tight with concern. They're combat models. Their shields are even stronger. Jax let out a frustrated growl as a concentrated burst from his energy rifle barely grazed one of the new figures. These bastards are tough. Any weaknesses, Chloe? Working on it, Jax, Chloe replied, her fingers flying across her wrist console, holographic schematics of the obsidian suits flickering before her eyes. Their energy absorption is phenomenal, but there has to be a frequency overload point. I saw Griff engage one of the larger combat models. His plasma cannon, usually devastating, seemed less effective against its reinforced shields. The obsidian-suited behemoth returned fire, a wide beam of crimson energy sweeping towards Griff. He dove behind a crumbling pillar, the beam incinerating the rock where he had stood. I need to disable more amplifiers, I shouted, knowing that weakening the anchor was our best long-term strategy. They're strengthening the tier. If they fully open that thing, we're all dead. I focused on the next obsidian structure, trying to gauge the safest route. It was on the opposite side of the cavern, closer to the growing vortex. The combat here was intense, a chaotic ballet of energy, fire, and evasive maneuvers. Carter, suppressive fire, Eva commanded, seeing my intention. She laid down a barrage of energy bolts, creating a brief window of opportunity. I broke cover again, sprinting towards the third amplifier. Crimson beams lanced past me, scorching the air. I could feel the intense, cold scrutiny of the hive mind. It knew what I was doing, and it was actively trying to stop me. A faint, almost imperceptible psionic pulse, like a cold hand, brushed against my mind, attempting to disorient me. I pushed back using the neural inhibitors Dr. Thorne had given me and my own honed mental defenses. You will not break me, I thought, a defiant spark in my mind. I am a bridge builder. I create order. Reaching the third amplifier, I slammed my hand onto its surface, pushing my consciousness into its core. This one felt different, more fortified. The alien logic was denser, more resistant. It fought back, lashing out with tendrils of cold, unfeeling energy, trying to probe and overwhelm my mind. I gritted my teeth, visualizing the Arbiter's collapse, drawing on that traumatic memory as a source of strength, a reminder of what was at stake. It's fighting back, I gasped, the pressure in my head growing. My nose started to bleed again, a warm stream trickling down my lip. Hang in there, Carter, Eva shouted, her voice thick with exertion as she dodged a beam. Chloe, any luck? Almost, Chloe's voice was a furious whisper. Their energy matrix is incredibly complex, but I think I have a resonant frequency. It might temporarily destabilize their shields. Just as Chloe spoke, the obsidian structure beneath my hand shuddered violently. A low, grinding groan echoed through the cavern, and a crack, like a spiderweb, spread across its smooth surface. The structure's hum died, replaced by a flickering, unstable light. The dimensional anchor in the center of the cavern recoiled, its expansion reversing sharply for a moment before stabilizing at a reduced rate. "Three down," I yelled, pulling my hand away, my entire arm tingling with residual energy. "The anchor is retracting, but slowly." "Chloe now," Eva roared, seeing the opportunity. "Firing resonant frequency," Chloe screamed, her wrist device emitting a high-pitched, almost ultrasonic whine. A wave of shimmering blue energy rippled across the cavern, washing over the obsidian-suited operatives. The effect was instantaneous and dramatic. The dark suits of the operatives, which had been absorbing all light, suddenly flared with an intense, chaotic energy. Their shields flickered, crackled, and then, with a cascade of sparks, momentarily failed. "Their shields are down," Jax yelled, seizing the chance. He unleashed a full burst from his energy rifle, slamming it into the chest of a normal-sized operative. This time the bolt didn't deflect. It tore through the weakened suit, hitting the figure with full force. The operative staggered, a plume of acrid smoke rising from its chest, and then collapsed, its limbs twitching for a moment before it went still. "It worked," Eva shouted, her eyes gleaming. "Focus fire, hit them while they're vulnerable." Our team erupted with renewed ferocity. Jax targeted the smaller operatives, his shots precise and deadly. Griff, with a roar of pure triumph, redirected his plasma cannon towards a combat model. The superheated plasma engulfed the hulking figure, its suit melting and vaporizing under the onslaught. The combat model didn't scream, didn't recoil. It simply disintegrated, leaving only a faint scorch mark on the cavern floor. Eva moved like a whirlwind, her energy rifle spitting bolts, taking down one operative after another. Chloe, having delivered the critical blow, now switched her focus to analyzing the collapsing shields, refining her frequency to keep them down. I too joined the fray. While my psionic abilities were best suited for disruption and sensing, I carried a standard Aegis sidearm. The obsidian operatives were still deadly, even without their shields, but now they were vulnerable. I aimed for critical points, my shots echoing through the cavern. The unknown faction's operatives, despite their numbers and advanced technology, were not accustomed to such a coordinated, overwhelming counterattack. Their hive mind, accustomed to silent, surgical operations, seemed momentarily flustered by our aggression. Their movements became less precise, their crimson beams slightly less accurate. But just as we began to gain the upper hand, a new threat emerged. From within the shimmering vortex of the dimensional anchor, a dark, shadowy mass began to coalesce. It was vast, amorphous, and seemed to drain the very light from the air around it. It pulsed with an immense, malevolent energy that caused my psionic senses to scream a silent warning. "It's coming through," Chloe yelled, her voice filled with alarm. "The dimensional anchor is stabilizing despite the amplifier disruptions. Something massive is forcing its way through." "Carter, your read," Eva demanded, her eyes fixed on the growing horror. I closed my eyes, pushing my psionic senses into the heart of the anomaly. The entity was not like the Arbiter, not a fragmented consciousness. It was more primal, more ancient. A being of pure, unfettered, chaotic energy, bound only by its own hunger. It radiated a cold, cosmic apathy, a desire to consume all that it touched, not for survival, but for its own intrinsic nature. "It's a primordial entity," I shouted, the words tearing from my throat. "A being of pure void, it exists to unmake reality. The faction isn't just opening the tier, they're providing it a path, feeding it stability." As I spoke, the shadowy mass gained form. It was colossal, with vaguely serpentine tendrils that writhed like living shadows. Its head was a swirling vortex of nothingness, and from it, twin points of sickly green light like eyes fixated on us. A low, guttural rumble emanated from its form, vibrating through the cavern, threatening to shake the very foundations of the earth. The dimensional anchor isn't just a tier, I realized, a horrifying insight striking me. It's a funnel. The faction isn't trying to control it. They're trying to control what comes out of it. They're using these structures to direct its exit point to contain its initial expansion. Why would they do that? Jax asked, his voice raw with disbelief as he fired a futile shot at the monstrous entity. The bolt was simply absorbed into its shadowy form, vanishing without a trace. I don't know, I yelled back, but if this thing fully manifests, New York will be gone. The entire eastern seaboard could unravel. The combat models of the Obsidian faction, seeing their ultimate weapon manifesting, redoubled their efforts, now moving to protect the growing entity. Their shields, having cycled back online, flared into full power, making them invulnerable to our energy weapons once more. Their shields are back, Chloe cried out, her efforts to destabilize them now failing. They've adapted to the frequency. Fall back, regroup, Eva ordered, her voice cutting through the din. We retreated behind a series of reinforced, ancient pillars, taking cover from the renewed onslaught of crimson beams. The cavern floor began to crack and heave under the entity's growing mass. Bits of rock and debris floated upwards, defying gravity, only to be absorbed into its shadowy tendrils. The temperature in the cavern plummeted, and the air grew thin, hard to breathe. "We can't fight that thing," Jax exclaimed, peering from behind his cover. "It's a black hole with tentacles." "We have to stop it from coming through," Eva replied, her face grim, eyes darting between the encroaching entity and the Obsidian operatives. "Chloe, can you reverse the anchor's polarity? Collapse it?"